Celebrity in Blood. By Michael. Front Matter. To the relentless pursuers of truth, the brave souls who dare to delve into the darkness, and to those who have known the chilling grip of unsolved mysteries. This book is dedicated to the unwavering strength of spirit found in the face of adversity, to the tenacity that refuses to let go, and to the enduring power of hope even when shadows loom large. It's for the detectives, both fictional and real, who tirelessly piece together fragments of shattered lives, who chase down elusive clues in the dead of night, and who bear the weight of unanswered questions with unwavering courage. It's also for the victims, whose stories may never be fully told, whose voices may be silenced, but whose memories deserve to be honored and remembered. Their lives, abruptly cut short, echo in the silence, a testament to the fragility of existence and the enduring need for justice. This book attempts to give voice to their unspoken pain, to illuminate the darkness that surrounded their final moments, and to offer a small measure of solace in the face of unbearable loss. This work is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It is an exploration of the fine line between triumph and despair, between clarity and the suffocating fog of uncertainty. It's a nod to the complexity of human nature, the depths of our capacity for both good and evil, and the enduring power of the human spirit to persevere. It's an acknowledgement of the scars we carry, the wounds that never fully heal, and the ways in which the past continues to shape our present. In writing this story, I have sought to explore the intricate dance between light and shadow, the unsettling realization that sometimes the most brilliant minds can be blinded by their own preconceptions, and the courage it takes to confront one's own demons, to grapple with the weight of past failures, and to emerge from the darkness, stronger and wiser. For every Izzy Diaz who battles personal demons and external forces, for every Eliza Beaumont and Serafina Bellwether whose lives were tragically cut short, this book serves as a reminder that even amidst chaos, even in the face of the darkest secrets, the relentless pursuit of truth can prevail. It is a testament to the unwavering belief in justice, even when the odds seem insurmountable. For those who seek solace in the unraveling of mysteries and the pursuit of justice, this book is for you. May it offer both a thrill and a reflection of the human condition. Chapter 1. The Gilded Cage. The French doors of Serafina Bellwether's mansion stood ajar, a cruel mockery of the opulent life lived within. Sunlight streamed into the cavernous living room, illuminating a scene of stark contrast. The plush, velvet sofas, the priceless Persian rugs, the shimmering crystal chandelier, all dwarfed by the stark reality of Serafina's lifeless body sprawled on the marble floor. She lay amidst a scattering of crimson rose petals, their velvety texture a grotesque parody of the vibrant life now extinguished. A single, exquisitely crafted silver dagger, its hilt inlaid with obsidian, rested on her chest, its point buried deep. Detective Isabella, Izzy Diaz arrived at the scene, the flashing lights of the assembled media a jarring counterpoint to the hushed reverence of the uniformed officers. The air thrummed with the low hum of 1,000 whispered anxieties. The scent of expensive perfume, still clinging to the air, warred with the metallic tang of blood. Izzy, a veteran of countless crime scenes, felt a chill deeper than the usual unease. This was different. This was theatrical. The room itself was a testament to Bellwether's success. Every surface gleamed with polished perfection. Antique furniture whispered tales of bygone eras. Artwork worthy of a museum adorned the walls. But the calculated arrangement of the rose petals, the precise placement of the dagger, the almost artistic composition of the body, these spoke of a killer who wasn't just brutal, but deliberate, almost performative. Sergeant Miller, her perpetually harried partner, approached, his face etched with the weariness of a long night. Another one, Izzy. They're calling it the Crimson Curtain already. The press is having a field day. Izzy barely registered his words, her gaze fixed on the victim. Serafina Bellwether, the ethereal beauty, the Hollywood darling, was reduced to a tableau of tragic grace. The meticulous staging screamed of a message, a performance intended for a much wider audience than just the first responders. Any witnesses? Izzy asked, her voice sharp, cutting through the tense silence. Miller shook his head. Nothing concrete. Security footage is patchy, and the staff are all accounted for, but naturally, everyone's a suspect right now. The initial investigation unfolded like a twisted play, each character a potential villain. Serafina's life, from the outside, had seemed idyllic. The stunning villa, the A-list friends, the lucrative film contracts, the picture of perfect Hollywood glamour. But beneath the surface, Izzy quickly discovered a tapestry woven from jealousy, betrayal, and simmering resentments. There was Ava Moreau, the rising star who'd openly coveted Serafina's roles and fame. Their rivalry had been well documented, splashed across tabloid headlines for months. Then there was Julian Thorne, the enigmatic director who'd once been romantically linked to Serafina, their passionate affair ending in a bitter public feud. And finally, there was Marcus Sterling, Serafina's business manager, a man rumored to be deeply in debt and poised to benefit handsomely from her death. The detectives began their meticulous work, collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses, slowly piecing together a fractured narrative. Each interview revealed another layer of complexity, another hidden resentment, another carefully concealed secret. Izzy's team painstakingly documented every detail: the scratches on a nearby antique table, the faint smudges of lipstick on a champagne glass, the unusual pattern of footprints near the window. They were building a case, brick by bloody brick. But Izzy felt a nagging sense of unease. Something about the case felt off. The level of meticulous planning, the theatricality of the scene, the almost artistic precision of the murder, it pointed towards a killer operating on a level beyond mere vengeance. This wasn't a crime of passion, this was a performance, a meticulously orchestrated spectacle designed to send a message. As the investigation progressed, Izzy started to unravel the threads of Serafina's life, digging into her past relationships, her professional rivalries, her financial dealings. Each conversation, each document, each piece of evidence revealed new depths of deceit. She discovered clandestine meetings, secret accounts, and whispered rumors of a shadowy organization pulling the strings behind the scenes. The team meticulously reviewed Serafina's personal belongings, her diaries overflowing with cryptic entries, hinting at hidden fears and suppressed anxieties. Her phone records revealed a series of late-night calls and deleted messages. Financial records detailed an unexpected surge of anonymous donations to her charitable foundation, followed by unusually large withdrawals just days before her death. Izzy felt the weight of the case pressing down on her. The pressure from the media was relentless, the public's thirst for answers insatiable. The city was gripped by fear, the glittering facade of Hollywood momentarily shattered, revealing a dark, sinister underbelly. Each clue, each red herring, only served to deepen the mystery, leading Izzy further down a rabbit hole of deception and betrayal. She had a feeling that this case was only the beginning, that the Crimson Curtain was about to rise on a far grander and far more sinister stage. The opulent setting of the crime scene became a chilling metaphor for the deceptive glamour of Hollywood itself, a gilded cage concealing a brutal truth. The investigation, she suspected, was about to delve into a world far more complicated than she could have ever imagined. The theatrical nature of the murder, however, suggested the killer had a specific audience in mind. The question was, who? And what was the message they were trying to convey? The answer, Izzy knew, lay buried somewhere in the shadowy corners of Hollywood's glittering facade, waiting to be unearthed. The polished surface of the mahogany desk felt cold beneath Izzy's fingertips. She traced the grain with a distracted finger, her gaze fixed on the flickering city lights sprawling below her high-rise apartment window. The city that glittered so alluringly from a distance now seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, a reflection of the darkness that had settled in her soul. The opulent setting of Serafina Bellwether's murder, the theatrical flair of the killer, it all echoed a case from her past, a case she'd never truly let go. It had been 5 years since the Beaumont case, a case that had shadowed her every waking moment since. A young woman, Eliza Beaumont, found murdered in her own meticulously designed apartment, a crime scene eerily reminiscent of Serafina's. Eliza, a rising star in the art world, was known for her eccentric tastes, her flair for the dramatic, her life a carefully curated performance. Her murder had been meticulously staged, a gruesome display of artistry, a mocking tribute to her creativity. A single, crimson-stained paintbrush had been placed across her chest, its bristles stiff with dried blood. The parallels between the two cases were unsettling, an echo of a past trauma reverberating through her present. The Beaumont case had haunted Izzy. She had spent countless nights poring over the evidence. The details of that night burned into her memory, refusing to let it go. The killer had never been caught. The trial, the media circus, the relentless pressure from the public, it had pushed her to the edge, leaving her with an unshakable conviction that she had failed Eliza. The whispers of inadequacy, of failure, echoed in every case she touched afterwards, a constant reminder of the one that slipped through her fingers. The feeling was a heavy blanket wrapped around her heart, stifling the joy that she'd once felt in her work. She'd found herself pushing her partner, Sergeant Miller, away, choosing to work alone for months on end. The isolation offered a perverse comfort, a sanctuary from the relentless questioning of her capabilities. She was a shadow of her former self, constantly reminding herself of her past failures, which only fueled the relentless anxiety that had become her closest companion. Yet, something in the Bellwether case stirred in her. The theatricality, the meticulous precision of the crime scene, the very arrogance of the killer, it mirrored the Beaumont case in ways too striking to ignore. It was a grim déjà vu, a twisted reprise of the past, a haunting echo of the trauma that had broken her. This was a cruel joke, the universe taunting her with a case that reminded her of her past failures. She had a feeling she'd failed again. The investigation into Serafina's murder had begun to blur, the lines between the present and the past becoming indistinguishable. The details of the Beaumont case replayed in her mind like a broken record, each detail a stab of guilt, a reminder of her failures. She knew that she couldn't let her past trauma dictate her present, but the fear of repeating the mistakes she had made in the Beaumont case was almost paralyzing. The similarities between the cases felt more than just coincidence. Izzy recalled the meticulous way in which Eliza Beaumont's apartment had been staged, each item positioned with chilling precision. It was as if the killer had wanted to create an art installation, a macabre masterpiece of death. The crimson paintbrush, a symbol of creative passion twisted into an instrument of violence, had sent a shiver down her spine every time she thought about it. It was a detail she had failed to fully utilize, which still haunted her. The crimson petals scattered around Serafina, was it a stylistic parallel? The recurring motif of crimson, the meticulous staging, the choice of weapon, each detail was a thread connecting the two cases. She had to ask herself, what exactly did the killer want? What message were they trying to send? Was this a copycat killer, or was it the same person, returning for an encore? This was a question that wouldn't leave her alone. The pressure to solve this case was immense. The media was relentless, the public was demanding answers, and her superiors expected results. But Izzy knew that she couldn't rush this, that she couldn't let her past trauma cloud her judgment. She had to dig deeper, to find the connections between the two cases, and to understand what drove the killer to inflict such elaborate violence. She spent her nights poring over the files, revisiting old crime scenes in her mind's eye. She interviewed witnesses from the Beaumont case, looking for any overlooked details, anything that might have been missed. She sought out therapists to help her manage her trauma, but the feelings of guilt and failure seemed too deeply ingrained. She was battling two internal demons, her personal trauma and the need to solve the case without letting the past interfere. Each night, the shadows in her apartment seemed to deepen, reflecting the darkness she carried inside. The city lights that had once been a comforting distraction now felt like the eyes of a relentless judge. She was consumed by the case, haunted by her past, and driven by a need to prevent another tragedy. The need for justice was an engine driving her forward. As Izzy delved deeper into the investigation, she discovered subtle discrepancies in both cases. In Beaumont's apartment, there had been a small, almost imperceptible scratch on a rare Ming vase, a detail overlooked at the time. In Serafina's mansion, a similar scratch was found on an antique clock. Were they merely coincidences or links in a chain of events, pointing to a deeper, more sinister connection? The weight of the past, the burden of unsolved mysteries, and the escalating pressure to close the current case, threatened to overwhelm her. The blurred lines between the two cases continued to haunt her. Izzy's professional and personal life was beginning to merge. She was on edge, her focus fragmented between her professional responsibilities and the deep psychological scars of her past failures. The question kept nagging at her: was this a sick game, a morbid tribute to her past failure? Or was this a far more intricate plan that she'd failed to grasp? She questioned her sanity at times. The pressure was building, the case was twisting, and her own mental health hung in the balance. Was this the same person, coming back to taunt her after years of silence? The answer, Izzy knew, was hidden somewhere in the shadowy corners of her own mind, a darkness threatening to consume her. The weight of 2 unsolved cases, coupled with her past failures and trauma, made her feel like she was walking a tightrope above a chasm of despair. The next step in this investigation would not only solve the current case but, perhaps, finally lay to rest the ghosts of her past. The chilling reality was that the only way out of this was through. The next move was hers to make, a step towards salvation or further damnation. The initial wave of grief and public outcry surrounding Serafina Bellwether's murder had begun to subside, replaced by a relentless media frenzy focused on speculation and the emergence of potential suspects. Izzy, already grappling with the haunting echoes of the Beaumont case, found herself wading through a mire of conflicting testimonies, half-truths, and carefully crafted alibis. The gilded cage of Hollywood, so alluring from the outside, had revealed its sharp, venomous teeth. First among the suspects was Serafina's supposed rival, Vanessa Thorne, a younger actress whose career had been eclipsed by Serafina's enduring success. Vanessa, with her icy demeanor and simmering ambition, had openly expressed frustration at Serafina's continued dominance in the industry. Numerous witnesses reported overhearing her disparaging remarks about Serafina, fueled by alcohol and the bitter sting of professional jealousy. Security footage from various awards ceremonies and premieres showed Vanessa and Serafina in close proximity, their interactions ranging from strained politeness to thinly veiled hostility. Furthermore, a disgruntled makeup artist claimed to have seen Vanessa in the vicinity of Serafina's mansion in the hours leading up to the murder. However, Vanessa had a solid alibi, placing her at a charity gala across town, corroborated by several high-profile attendees and detailed photographic evidence. Still, the lingering animosity and the opportunistic proximity couldn't be entirely dismissed. Next came Damian Blackwood, Serafina's former lover, a charismatic but volatile musician known for his erratic behavior and history of violent outbursts. Their relationship, tempestuous from the outset, had ended acrimoniously, punctuated by public arguments and allegations of infidelity. A close friend of Damian's, a fellow musician who'd spoken to him that night, reported him being in a state of extreme emotional distress. Damian was known to be deeply possessive and had never fully accepted the end of his affair with Serafina. Texts recovered from Serafina's phone revealed a series of increasingly angry messages from Damian, threatening and accusatory in tone. Despite this damning evidence, Damian provided an alibi through a string of text message exchanges with various people, with timestamps that seemed authentic and verified. The seemingly airtight alibi, combined with a compelling witness placing him in another location, left Izzy questioning the strength of their case. But the anger was palpable, the potential motive undeniable. The third suspect, Julian Vance, Serafina's longtime business partner and confidant, presented a more complex profile. Julian, outwardly calm and composed, appeared to be the picture of discretion and professionalism. He and Serafina had made millions by investing in emerging talent, their business dealings opaque yet extraordinarily lucrative. However, recent financial discrepancies in their company's records raised suspicion. Izzy's forensic accountant discovered a significant sum of money mysteriously transferred to an offshore account shortly before Serafina's death, a transfer that seemed strikingly inconsistent with their established practices. Although Julian possessed both the motive and opportunity, proving a direct link to the murder was proving exceptionally challenging. His calm demeanor and air of aloofness during interrogation made him appear deceptively harmless, yet his subtle evasiveness added fuel to the fire. Izzy's team, a mix of seasoned detectives and eager young recruits, worked tirelessly, pulling together pieces of a complex puzzle. Sergeant Miller, her partner, although initially resistant to Izzy's solitary approach, was now actively participating, offering invaluable support in sifting through the mountains of evidence. Each lead, however promising, seemed to splinter into a dozen more, creating a labyrinth of potential suspects and storylines. The media, meanwhile, relentlessly hounded the investigation, publishing speculative articles based on leaked information, further complicating the process and adding more pressure to the team. The pressure on Izzy felt like a physical weight, a constant reminder of the stakes and the potential for another failure. The similarities to the Beaumont case were more than coincidental, a haunting repetition of pain and uncertainty. Days bled into weeks. Izzy found herself working late into the night, poring over crime scene photos, scrutinizing forensic reports, and conducting countless interviews. She discovered a pattern in the way the three suspects were connected to Serafina, a web of professional and personal relationships, each intertwined with financial dealings and simmering resentments. The initial jealousy, rage and greed all presented strong motives. Yet, a subtle inconsistency continued to plague her, the meticulous staging of the crime scenes. It was the theatricality that continued to unsettle her, the almost theatrical precision of the staging. It was a signature, a mark of a sophisticated mind, one that enjoyed the elaborate and symbolic nature of the crime. The placement of the crimson petals around Serafina's body, reminiscent of the crimson paintbrush in the Beaumont case, suggested a connection. This was not the work of a random killer, it was the act of someone who sought attention, who relished the dramatic flair of their crime. But who, and why? As the investigation deepened, Izzy's sleep deprivation and the emotional toll began to take its toll. The specter of Eliza Beaumont, her unsolved case, haunted her every waking moment. The similarities in the meticulously planned scenarios between the two cases, so unnervingly close, were fueling her anxiety. She had to confront her demons if she ever hoped to solve these cases. The constant questioning, the doubt, the fear that it could happen again, drove her forward. She revisited the witness testimonies from the Beaumont case, searching for overlooked clues. A small detail, almost imperceptible, emerged, a mention of an unusual piece of jewelry Eliza Beaumont had been wearing on the night she was murdered, a rare, antique brooch shaped like a stylized crimson flower. The description triggered a vague memory, something she'd dismissed as insignificant years ago. Could that be a connection? A painstaking search through the evidence from Serafina's murder finally produced a small, fragmented piece of jewelry, found near the crime scene, partially embedded in the carpet. It was small, a delicate piece of crimson enamel work, a stylized flower similar to the one described in the Beaumont case. The fragment was too small to identify conclusively, yet it was a significant development. This could be the missing link she was searching for. The similarities between the two cases were growing stronger, the methodical and almost theatrical nature of the crimes indicating a potential connection that spanned years. The fragments were slowly coming together, yet the final picture remained elusive, shrouded in layers of deceit and carefully constructed alibis. Izzy knew that she was close, yet the final answer remained just out of reach. Her instinct told her that the key was hidden in the intersection of these three seemingly disparate individuals, a shared connection, an unseen thread, waiting to be revealed. The pressure mounted, the clock ticked on, and Izzy knew that the final act was about to begin. The crimson petals, meticulously arranged around Serafina's lifeless body, were not the only unsettling detail at the crime scene. Nestled amongst the carefully placed blossoms, almost hidden beneath a fallen drape of silk, lay something far more sinister, a calling card. It wasn't a business card, or a note with a threatening message, but something far more unsettling. It was a piece of art, a miniature sculpture crafted from what appeared to be blackened silver, intricately designed and disturbingly beautiful. It resembled a stylized raven, its wings spread wide, each feather meticulously detailed, crafted with a precision that hinted at a meticulous mind. But what set it apart was the raven's eye, a single, brilliant ruby, pulsating with an unnatural, almost malevolent glow. Sergeant Miller, usually stoic and pragmatic, stared at the photograph of the artifact with a noticeable shudder. "It's unsettling," he murmured, his voice low. "Too perfect, too deliberate. It's like a piece from some macabre stage production." Izzy nodded, her gaze fixed on the image. The raven's eye, that ruby, seemed to burn a hole in her memory. It was a disturbing echo of the meticulously planned chaos in the Beaumont case, a chilling repetition of the same horrifying artistry. The initial wave of shock at its presence gradually subsided, replaced by a cold wave of professional focus. It was a puzzle piece she hadn't expected, a significant departure from the usual methods of a typical crime, and its artistic nature was both perplexing and terrifying. This was no clumsy act of violence. This was a performance, a calculated statement. The team's forensic specialist, Dr. Anya Sharma, a sharp-witted woman with a passion for the intricate details of criminal investigation, confirmed that the raven was indeed crafted from a silver alloy, darkened with an unknown substance. The ruby, she revealed, was a genuine Burmese ruby of exceptional quality, and it wasn't simply placed in the raven's eye socket. It was seamlessly integrated into the design, as if it had always been a part of the piece. The craftsmanship is exquisite, she reported. Whoever made this was a highly skilled artisan, possibly a professional jeweler or sculptor. Izzy's mind raced. A skilled artisan. Was this a signature? A calling card, in the truest sense of the word? The idea felt almost too audacious, too theatrical for a simple murder. But the evidence before her screamed of a calculated precision, a desire not merely to kill, but to create a work of art out of death. The question remained, who was this artist? And what did this meticulously crafted raven signify? Days turned into weeks as the team embarked on a painstaking investigation into the origins of the raven. They contacted every jewelry maker, sculptor, and art dealer within a 100-mile radius. They scoured auction records, museum archives, and online art databases, attempting to identify the style, and potentially the maker. They even brought in an art historian specializing in dark romanticism and macabre symbolism, hoping for a clue that could decipher the meaning behind the unsettling artwork. Each lead yielded only frustration. The raven's style was unique, blending elements of Art Nouveau with a disturbingly Gothic twist, defying easy categorization. It was as if the artist had deliberately obscured their origins, leaving only a baffling work of art in its wake. The team's efforts started to feel like searching for a needle in an impossibly vast haystack. Meanwhile, the media frenzy surrounding Serafina's murder continued unabated. The discovery of the raven served only to intensify public fascination, transforming the investigation into a spectacle. The raven was even dubbed the Raven's Eye, becoming a trending hashtag and fueling wild speculation online. Theories ranged from occult rituals to elaborate revenge plots, with each new article adding to the noise and making Izzy's job all the more difficult. Izzy felt the pressure mounting. The Beaumont case, with its chilling similarities, loomed large in her mind. The meticulous planning, the artistic touch, the haunting symbolism, it was all uncannily similar. And now, this raven. It felt like a direct challenge, a taunt from the perpetrator, daring her to connect the dots. She revisited the Beaumont crime scene photos, searching for overlooked details. She remembered the mention of a rare brooch, a stylized crimson flower, described by a witness. It had been dismissed at the time, but now, in the light of the raven, the dismissed detail suddenly held a significant weight. The flower, the raven, the meticulously arranged crimson petals. They all hinted at a shared aesthetic, a singular artistic vision. Izzy pushed her team harder, demanding a more comprehensive analysis of the raven. A closer examination revealed tiny inscriptions etched on the underside of the raven's wings, almost invisible to the naked eye. Dr. Sharma, using advanced imaging technology, managed to enhance the image, revealing a series of symbols. They weren't letters, but rather arcane symbols, that seemed to echo ancient languages and mysterious texts. The symbols were similar in style to those found on a number of medieval and Renaissance art pieces. The hunt for the meaning behind these symbols led Izzy down a rabbit hole of historical research and esoteric knowledge. She consulted experts in medieval art, alchemical symbolism, and even ancient mythology. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to decipher the meaning behind the symbols, a sequence of dates, names, and locations, each one encrypted in a different symbolic language. One of the dates, deciphered through the study of medieval astronomical charts, pointed towards a specific star constellation visible in the sky on the night of Serafina's murder. Another symbol, analyzed with an expert in Renaissance alchemic symbolism, alluded to a particular location on Serafina's expansive estate that had been overlooked during the initial crime scene investigation. The puzzle pieces were slowly falling into place, revealing a picture far more intricate and sinister than Izzy had ever imagined. The raven was not merely a symbol, it was a map, a complex cipher leading her to the killer's next move. But the location alluded to was not a place, but a person. A person who was seemingly unconnected to the initial suspects, but who harbored a deep-seated hatred for Serafina, a secret enemy residing within her own inner circle, masked by a facade of loyalty and friendship. Izzy knew then that the final act was about to begin, and the true face of the killer was about to be revealed. The meticulously crafted raven was not just a calling card, it was an invitation. The decoded symbols led Izzy to Elias Thorne, a reclusive film producer known for his eccentric personality and penchant for secrecy. Thorne, a titan in Hollywood, was a name whispered in hushed tones, a man whose influence extended far beyond the silver screen. His association with Serafina was tenuous at best, a single, seemingly insignificant meeting documented in Serafina's social calendar, a luncheon attended by a handful of other industry elites. But Izzy's gut told her that this tenuous thread was the key to unlocking the larger mystery. Thorne's life was a carefully constructed enigma. He resided in a secluded mansion perched atop Mulholland Drive, a fortress of privacy surrounded by impenetrable walls and state-of-the-art security systems. His past was shrouded in mystery, punctuated by rumors of illicit dealings, shady partnerships, and a string of mysteriously vanished associates. He was a man who operated in the shadows, pulling strings from the back rooms of power, his image carefully cultivated and meticulously controlled. The team began their surveillance of Thorne's estate, utilizing every technological tool at their disposal. They monitored his communications, tracked his movements, and analyzed his financial transactions. They discovered a pattern of unusual activity, discreet meetings in dimly lit cafes, encrypted emails sent through anonymous servers, and large sums of money transferred through offshore accounts. Each revelation only deepened the mystery surrounding Thorne, reinforcing Izzy's suspicion that he was more than just a peripheral figure in Serafina's murder. Days bled into nights as Izzy and her team pieced together the fragmented puzzle. They discovered Thorne had been involved in a series of complex financial deals with Serafina, deals shrouded in secrecy and lacking transparency. There were whispers of a broken partnership, of a lucrative deal gone sour, of a potential betrayal that could have cost Thorne millions. The financial records were meticulously obfuscated, layered with shell corporations and complex legal maneuvers, but Izzy's team, with the help of a specialist in financial crime, began to unravel the tangled web. Then came the breakthrough. A forgotten clause in one of the contracts, buried beneath layers of legalese, revealed a contingency plan. If Serafina were to breach the agreement, Thorne had the right to seize a significant portion of her assets, a clause that only solidified Izzy's suspicion of a motive for murder. But the clause wasn't just about money, it contained a cryptic reference to a Project Nightingale, a code name that sent shivers down Izzy's spine. Project Nightingale. The phrase echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of the clandestine nature of the operations conducted by Thorne. Izzy knew that this wasn't just a business deal gone wrong. This was something far more sinister, far more dangerous. She recalled the meticulous artistry of the raven, its macabre beauty, and the encoded messages contained within its intricate design. It felt like a calculated artistic statement, a signature of someone deeply connected to Thorne's world of intrigue. The investigation expanded beyond the confines of Serafina's immediate circle, delving into the murky world of Hollywood power brokers and their hidden agendas. Izzy's team uncovered a network of influence peddling, blackmail, and illicit deals, a tangled web connecting Thorne to some of the most powerful names in the industry. The whispers she had heard about Thorne's shadowy operations were not merely rumors, they were cold, hard facts. One of the team's informants, a disgruntled former employee of Thorne's production company, revealed a chilling detail. Thorne had a fascination with dark arts, a morbid interest in macabre symbolism, and an uncanny resemblance to the artistic style of the raven. The informant described a secret room within Thorne's mansion, a hidden atelier where Thorne indulged in his artistic obsessions, creating sculptures and jewelry that bordered on the grotesque. Armed with this new information, Izzy obtained a warrant to search Thorne's mansion. The search revealed a trove of unsettling artifacts. Dozens of intricately crafted sculptures, many resembling the Raven, each bearing a unique, coded inscription, sketches depicting scenes of violence and death, rendered with startling realism, and a collection of rare and antique books on alchemy, occult rituals, and medieval symbology. The room was a disturbing testament to a mind obsessed with death, a disturbing echo of the crime scene. Among the artifacts, Izzy discovered a hidden compartment containing a collection of letters. The letters, written by Serafina, revealed a desperate plea for help, a desperate attempt to extricate herself from a dangerous situation. Serafina, it turned out, had uncovered Thorne's illegal activities, threatening to expose him, and subsequently, he had silenced her. The meticulous planning of her murder, the artistic flair of the Raven, it was all a perverse expression of Thorne's control, a chilling artistic statement of his power. The evidence was overwhelming. Elias Thorne was not only the mastermind behind Serafina's murder, but also the creator of the Raven, the chilling calling card that had led Izzy down this rabbit hole. He was a puppet master, pulling strings from the shadows, his influence extending far beyond the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, into a world of darkness and deception. But Thorne was not acting alone. The investigation uncovered a network of accomplices, individuals bound to Thorne by loyalty, fear, or shared secrets. They were the silent partners in his crimes, the shadows that allowed him to operate with impunity. The case, Izzy realized, was far from over. The uncovering of Thorne's involvement was only the beginning of a much larger, more complex investigation, a labyrinthine network of lies and deceit. Izzy felt a growing unease, a chilling premonition. The meticulously crafted Raven had led her to Thorne, but it also hinted at a deeper conspiracy, a network of influential figures entangled in a web of illicit dealings. The seemingly isolated murder of Serafina was, in fact, the tip of a much larger iceberg. The shadows of deceit stretched far and wide, reaching the highest echelons of power in Hollywood. Izzy knew that unmasking Thorne was only the first step in a long, dangerous journey to expose the truth, a journey that could threaten her career, her safety, and potentially, her life. The game, she realized, was far from over. The stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. The gilded cage of Hollywood was now a prison of secrets, and Izzy was locked inside, determined to expose its dark heart. The silence of the night was broken only by the rhythmic tick-tock of the clock, a constant reminder of the time slipping away, the urgency of the task before her. The shadows of deceit loomed large, and the hunt was far from over. Chapter 2. Web of Lies. The frantic call ripped through the quiet hum of Izzy's apartment. It was Detective Miller, his voice tight with urgency. Another one, Izzy. Same M.O., but different. The news hit Izzy like a physical blow. The carefully constructed calm she'd managed to maintain since apprehending Thorne crumbled. Another victim. Another meticulously staged murder scene, a macabre performance designed to taunt and terrify. The chilling familiarity of the situation sent a shiver down her spine. This time, the victim was renowned director, Julian Vance, a man known for his opulent lifestyle and even more opulent filmmaking. His body was discovered in his lavish Bel Air mansion, a stark contrast to Serafina's modest apartment, but the artistry of the crime scene was eerily similar. A single raven, crafted with the same unsettling precision, rested on Vance's chest, its obsidian eyes gleaming under the harsh glare of the crime scene lights. But there was a twist. This raven was different. While mirroring the intricate detail of the first, this one held a subtle alteration, a single crimson feather tucked amongst the black. A detail so small, so easily overlooked, yet so profoundly significant. The police cordon was already in place, a swirling vortex of flashing lights and hushed whispers. Izzy pushed past the yellow tape, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The scene was a grotesque spectacle, a macabre tableau set against the backdrop of Vance's extravagant home. The opulent furnishings, once symbols of wealth and success, now served as a stark contrast to the brutality of the crime. The air hung heavy with the scent of expensive perfume and the metallic tang of blood. The raven, perched on Vance's chest, seemed to mock the lavish surroundings, a dark counterpoint to the gilded cage of Vance's life. The Crimson Feather. It gnawed at Izzy. It was a deliberate change, a subtle shift in the killer's signature, a deliberate deviation from the original pattern. It suggested a progression, an evolution in the killer's methodology, a hint of a deeper, more complex narrative unfolding beneath the surface of the macabre performances. Was it a message, a challenge, a warning? The forensic team was meticulously documenting the scene, their movements precise and methodical. Izzy observed them, her mind racing, trying to piece together the fragmented puzzle. The similarities between the two murders were undeniable, yet the subtle differences hinted at a hidden layer of complexity. The same artistic flair, the same calculated precision, yet a clear evolution in the killer's approach. This wasn't just a copycat killer. This was the same individual, refining their technique, escalating their game. Vance's home, unlike Serafina's apartment, revealed a life of excess and extravagance. The walls were adorned with priceless artwork, the floors covered in plush carpets, and the air thick with the scent of expensive cigars and aged wine. It was a world apart from Serafina's simple existence, yet the brutality of the crime scene transcended the disparity in their lifestyles, highlighting the universality of death. The stark contrast between the opulence of the setting and the brutality of the crime created a jarring dissonance, amplifying the chilling effect of the scene. The killer's choice of location wasn't random, it was a deliberate statement, a theatrical flourish designed to heighten the impact of their gruesome performance. The investigation into Vance's life revealed a complex web of relationships, both professional and personal. He had been embroiled in several high-profile disputes, both personal and professional. There were bitter rivalries, failed partnerships, and a string of disgruntled employees, all potential suspects. Unlike Serafina's seemingly quiet life, Vance's life was a public spectacle, a constant parade of social events, lavish parties, and public appearances. The abundance of potential suspects made the investigation exponentially more challenging. Days blurred into nights as Izzy and her team sifted through the mountain of evidence, their frustration growing with each passing hour. The killer's motives remained elusive, shrouded in a veil of mystery. Was this a case of revenge? A meticulously planned act of retribution? Or something far more sinister? The lack of a clear motive frustrated Izzy, forcing her to question her assumptions. She felt the pressure mounting, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. Two victims, both high-profile individuals, murdered in strikingly similar ways, yet with subtle, almost imperceptible differences. The Crimson Feather remained a haunting enigma, a perplexing detail that refused to yield its secrets. The police investigation focused on Vance's professional life, uncovering a complex network of rivalries and disputes. His films, while critically acclaimed, had attracted their fair share of controversy, generating both ardent fans and outspoken critics. His partnerships with other industry giants had been notoriously tumultuous, rife with legal battles and accusations of betrayal. The investigation delved into the labyrinthine world of Hollywood deal-making, revealing a cutthroat environment where ambition and greed often overshadowed ethical considerations. As Izzy delved deeper into Vance's life, she found a pattern of extravagance and recklessness bordering on self-destruction. He had a penchant for high-stakes gambling, extravagant parties, and reckless spending. Rumors of his involvement in shady deals, his reputation for ruthless ambition and his disregard for consequences painted a portrait of a man who lived on the edge. It seemed the Crimson Feather was a marker of this recklessness, a darker, more violent reflection of his lifestyle. The common thread linking Serafina and Vance, Izzy realized, was not their personalities or their social circles, but their connection to Elias Thorne. Both had been involved in business dealings with the reclusive film producer, and both had subsequently been silenced with unnerving precision and artistic flair. But the Crimson Feather suggested a change, an evolution in the killer's method, signifying something else was at play, something beyond the initial act of retribution or vengeance. The second murder heightened the stakes, adding a desperate urgency to the investigation. The killer's message, shrouded in the macabre artistry of the Ravens, had become all the more chilling. Izzy knew that time was running out, that the next victim might be closer than she realized. The City of Angels was now shrouded in the shadows of fear, its glittering facade masking a darker, more sinister truth. The rhythmic tick-tock of the clock in her apartment pulsed like a warning, a grim reminder of the relentless passage of time, and the race against a killer who was, in every sense of the word, a master of their craft. The game had become more dangerous, the stakes exponentially higher. Izzy was trapped in a deadly web, a complex game of cat and mouse with a killer who seemed to be several steps ahead. The hunt was far from over. The shadows of deceit were closing in. The initial suspects from Serafina's murder were a motley crew, each with their own carefully constructed facade. There was Marcus Reed, Serafina's estranged husband, a slick lawyer with a penchant for expensive suits and a carefully cultivated air of detachment. His alibi was airtight, corroborated by multiple witnesses, yet the subtle tremor in his voice during their initial interview had lingered in Izzy's memory. Then there was Julian Vance himself. Before his own untimely demise, he'd been a person of interest. Their connection to Elias Thorne, the reclusive film producer, formed the uneasy bridge between the two victims. Vance, in his opulent life, had been known for his ruthless ambition and his disregard for anyone who stood in his way. His death, however, had thrown a wrench into Izzy's meticulously constructed theory. Izzy revisited each suspect, this time with a renewed sense of urgency. Marcus Reed's office was a stark contrast to his impeccably tailored exterior. Files overflowed from cabinets, papers littered the desk, and a half-empty bottle of scotch sat next to a stack of legal documents. He seemed genuinely shaken by Vance's death, though Izzy couldn't shake the feeling he was hiding something. His responses were measured, almost too perfect, leaving Izzy with a nagging sense of unease. The subtle inconsistencies in his story, initially dismissed, now felt more significant, like the dissonant notes in a carefully composed symphony. During his second interrogation, Izzy subtly shifted her tactics. Instead of focusing on the hard evidence, she focused on his emotional state. She spoke of Serafina, not as a victim, but as a woman who'd loved him deeply, and of the crushing grief he must be feeling. She watched for any flicker of genuine remorse, any slip in his carefully constructed composure. And she found it, a brief moment of vulnerability that quickly disappeared, replaced by the mask of controlled grief. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it confirmed her suspicions. Reed was hiding something. The investigation into Vance's life had unearthed a complex web of professional rivalries and personal vendettas. His last film, a critically acclaimed but controversial masterpiece, had created both ardent fans and bitter enemies. Izzy interviewed several of Vance's colleagues, each interview revealing a new layer of intrigue and deception. Each individual presented a flawless exterior, polished and professional, but behind their carefully crafted public personas, Izzy sensed a simmering undercurrent of resentment, jealousy, and even hatred. One of Vance's former business partners, a flamboyant Hollywood producer named Ricardo Diaz, was particularly compelling. Diaz, known for his extravagant lifestyle and even more extravagant ego, had been embroiled in a bitter feud with Vance over a film project. The legal battle had been long and acrimonious, filled with accusations of sabotage and betrayal. Diaz's alibi was solid, yet his demeanor was marked by an unsettling calm, the kind that often masked simmering rage. He seemed almost gleeful when he spoke of Vance's demise. It was a subtle expression, but Izzy was trained to pick up on these nuances. Diaz knew more than he was letting on. Then there was Veronica Hayes, Vance's longtime assistant. She appeared demure and unassuming, yet her sharp eyes and calculated responses suggested a hidden intelligence. Hayes was a shadowy figure in Vance's life, privy to his secrets and his dealings. Her meticulously kept schedule, her unwavering demeanor, everything pointed towards a woman who knew how to keep secrets, and who wouldn't hesitate to protect them. The more Izzy delved into Hayes's background, the more she realized that this quiet, unassuming woman was much more than she appeared. She had a past, a carefully concealed one, that was linked to several individuals in Vance's circle. And those links were far more intricate and dangerous than Izzy could have initially imagined. The investigation revealed surprising alliances and unexpected betrayals, highlighting the complexity of relationships within Hollywood's elite. Long-standing friendships were revealed to be nothing more than carefully constructed facades, while seemingly insignificant acquaintances revealed themselves to be key players in a game of betrayal and revenge. The line between friend and foe blurred, as Izzy discovered hidden connections between individuals she had previously dismissed as irrelevant. As Izzy delved deeper into the personal lives of the suspects, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Each one had a dark secret, a hidden vulnerability, and an intricate web of relationships that connected them to both Vance and Serafina. These were not simple cases of revenge or retribution. This was a meticulously planned scheme, a conspiracy far more complex than she could have initially imagined. The revelation that both victims had been involved with Elias Thorne, the reclusive film producer, added another layer to the already complex puzzle. Thorne, a man shrouded in mystery, was known for his eccentric behavior and his ruthless ambition. His involvement with both victims indicated a potential motive, but the precise nature of their relationship and Thorne's potential role remained elusive. His reclusive nature and his ability to manipulate people from the shadows made him an extremely difficult target, further complicating the investigation. The investigation led Izzy down a rabbit hole of clandestine meetings, secret bank accounts, and anonymous phone calls. Each discovery brought her closer to the truth, yet also further into a web of deceit and treachery. She found herself navigating the treacherous waters of power and influence, where lies and betrayal were as common as the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. The investigation revealed a dark underbelly to the industry, a world where ambition and greed often overshadowed ethical considerations. The glamorous facades of success and wealth masked a cold and ruthless reality, where alliances were fluid and betrayals were common. The Crimson Feather, a seemingly insignificant detail from the Vance murder scene, emerged as a crucial clue. It hinted at an evolution in the killer's methodology, suggesting a shift in motives or perhaps, a new player in the game. This subtle change indicated that this wasn't merely a case of a copycat killer, but a deliberate escalation of the game. It suggested a calculated plan, a slow unveiling of the killer's ultimate objective. The feather was not simply an aesthetic choice. It was a message, a coded communication meant for someone within this elite circle. The more Izzy investigated, the more she realized the web was far larger than she had ever anticipated, encompassing several individuals with vested interests in keeping their secrets hidden, forming a network of protection and mutual interest. The stakes had increased exponentially. This wasn't simply a case of two murders, it was the unraveling of a conspiracy that reached the very heart of Hollywood's elite. The investigation, once focused on finding a single killer, now evolved into a complex puzzle involving multiple players, each with their own motives and secrets. The search for justice had become a desperate race against time, a battle against an enemy who was not only elusive, but also incredibly powerful and influential. Izzy found herself at the center of a maelstrom, fighting against not only a killer but also the intricate web of lies and deceit spun by the Hollywood elite. The game, it seemed, had only just begun. The Crimson Feather, a seemingly insignificant detail at first glance, had become the linchpin of Izzy's investigation. It wasn't just a random object left at the scene, it was a calling card, a deliberate message from the killer, a taunt thrown into the chaos of the investigation. Dismissing it as a mere coincidence was impossible, its very presence suggested a meticulously planned execution, a deliberate act of defiance. The feather itself, a vibrant crimson, almost unnatural in its intensity, was meticulously cleaned and placed, a stark contrast to the otherwise chaotic nature of Julian Vance's opulent study. Izzy's team, a collection of seasoned detectives and forensic specialists, began the painstaking process of deciphering its significance. They started with the obvious, the feather's origin. After a series of tests, they identified the species, a rare breed of crimson-crested pheasant, native to a remote region of the Himalayas. This discovery was initially perplexing, seemingly irrelevant to the glamorous world of Hollywood. But Izzy, never one to dismiss even the most obscure detail, sensed a deeper meaning. Their research extended beyond ornithology. They delved into historical texts, obscure folklore, and forgotten legends, searching for any connection between the crimson pheasant and the seemingly disparate victims. The initial leads were frustratingly thin, leading them down countless dead ends. Days turned into weeks, punctuated by late-night brainstorming sessions and countless hours spent poring over ancient texts and cryptic symbols. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Dr. Alistair Finch, a historian specializing in esoteric societies, was brought into the investigation. He immediately recognized the significance of the feather, linking it to a series of obscure historical events, each seemingly unconnected until he pieced them together. The crimson pheasant, he explained, was a recurring symbol in the iconography of a clandestine society known as the Order of the Crimson Dawn. This was no ordinary organization. Its existence was shrouded in secrecy, mentioned only in hushed whispers and forgotten historical records. The order, Dr. Finch explained, was believed to have originated centuries ago, its members drawn from the ranks of the wealthy and powerful. Their influence, he alleged, spanned empires and continents, leaving behind a trail of cryptic symbols and meticulously planned events throughout history. Their motives, shrouded in mystery, seemed to be rooted in some form of arcane knowledge or esoteric power, leaving behind a trail of cryptic clues for future scholars to decipher. Izzy's initial skepticism quickly melted away as Dr. Finch presented a series of compelling evidence. He showed them documents, unearthed from obscure archives, depicting the crimson feather alongside other symbols associated with the order. These symbols, subtly woven into historical tapestries, paintings, and even architectural designs, were remarkably similar to markings found in Vance's study and, chillingly, in Serafina's apartment. The connection was undeniable. The killer wasn't just leaving a calling card, they were sending a message, a coded communication meant for someone within the order, or perhaps, a warning to those who might be involved. The revelation sent shivers down Izzy's spine. She had stumbled upon something far larger, far more sinister than just a double homicide. She was now dealing with a centuries-old secret society, its members possibly intertwined with the very fabric of Hollywood's elite. The implications were staggering. The seemingly unrelated deaths of Vance and Serafina were not random acts of violence but carefully orchestrated events, part of a much larger, more sinister game. The Crimson Feather was not just a calling card, it was a key, unlocking a door to a world of hidden agendas, ancient secrets, and the potential for widespread chaos. The investigation took a drastic turn. Izzy and her team broadened their scope, delving into the history of the Order of the Crimson Dawn. They unearthed records of its influence throughout history, its members involved in everything from financial conspiracies and political assassinations to the manipulation of cultural movements and the orchestration of influential events. It was a spider's web of deceit, extending its influence through the corridors of power, manipulating events from the shadows. They traced the lineage of the Order, searching for current members. The task was daunting, the records fragmented and often contradictory, leading them through a labyrinth of cryptic clues and conflicting information. Each lead seemed to lead to another, like a never-ending maze. They uncovered a trail of coded messages hidden in plain sight, using a complex system of symbols and ciphers that could only be deciphered by those initiated into the Order's mysteries. Meanwhile, the suspects from the initial investigation were re-evaluated in light of this new information. Marcus Reed, Julian Vance's former business partner, Ricardo Diaz, and Vance's assistant, Veronica Hayes, were all re-evaluated. Each individual was examined through the lens of the Order's history, and each presented a new complexity to the already tangled web of connections. Marcus Reed, with his impeccable legal skills and his intimate knowledge of financial intricacies, was suddenly a prime suspect. His seemingly airtight alibi now seemed more like a carefully constructed deception, concealing a deeper connection to the Order's shadowy dealings. Was he merely a pawn in the game, or a powerful player manipulating the events from behind the scenes? The uncertainty was agonizing. Ricardo Diaz, with his lavish lifestyle and his history of controversial dealings, was a far more intriguing figure. His apparent glee at Vance's death, initially dismissed as simple rivalry, now seemed more sinister. Was he celebrating the removal of a rival, or was it something more profound, a ritualistic celebration of a successful elimination within the Order? Veronica Hayes, the quiet and unassuming assistant, emerged as a key figure in the investigation. Her meticulous schedule, her uncanny ability to remain one step ahead, and her deep knowledge of Vance's affairs suggested a much deeper involvement. Could she be a member of the Order herself, providing Vance with protection or support? Or was she merely a pawn in a game far beyond her comprehension? The investigation was now a race against time. Izzy knew that the Order, if they existed, would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. They had centuries of experience in maintaining their anonymity and controlling the narrative. Izzy and her team were up against a formidable adversary, an enemy with resources and influence far beyond their own. The revelation of the Order added a layer of historical depth to the mystery, turning a seemingly simple double homicide into a centuries-old conspiracy that reached the highest echelons of power and influence. The Crimson Feather, once an insignificant detail, had become a potent symbol of the hidden world that Izzy was now fighting to expose. The game had escalated, the stakes were higher, and the fight for justice was far from over. The truth, hidden beneath layers of deceit and centuries of secrecy, lay just beyond reach. The chase was on, a desperate race against time to uncover the truth before the Order could silence them permanently. The Crimson Feather was not just a symbol, it was a warning, a testament to the power and influence of a secret society operating in the shadows. The investigation had transformed into a battle against the unseen enemy, a struggle against a force far older, and far more powerful, than Izzy could have ever imagined. The journey to unmasking the Order of the Crimson Dawn was far from over, and the path ahead was fraught with danger, mystery, and the chilling realization that the lines between reality and illusion were blurring faster than she could keep pace. The realization that she was dealing with a centuries-old secret society, the Order of the Crimson Dawn, didn't just change the scope of the investigation, it fundamentally altered the rules of the game. The initial investigation, focused on relatively straightforward motives like jealousy, revenge, or financial disputes, had been replaced by a complex chess match played across centuries, with players whose motives were shrouded in ancient rituals and esoteric beliefs. The stakes were no longer just the lives of Julian Vance and Serafina Moreau, they were the secrets of a clandestine organization that had wielded influence for hundreds of years. The change was palpable. The sterile atmosphere of the police precinct, with its fluorescent lights and echoing hallways, seemed inadequate for the shadowy world Izzy was now navigating. She found herself staring out the window at the glittering Hollywood skyline, the city's glamour a stark contrast to the dark history she was uncovering. The familiar sights seemed to shimmer with a new, unsettling layer of meaning, each building, each street, potentially hiding a member of the Order. The next few days were a blur of intense activity. Izzy and her team worked tirelessly, pursuing every lead, however tenuous. They delved deeper into the Order's history, discovering cryptic references in historical documents, obscure symbols in Renaissance paintings, and coded messages hidden within architectural designs. The deeper they dug, the more they realized the extent of the Order's reach, its tentacles extending into every corner of power and influence. One evening, while poring over a particularly obscure manuscript, Izzy discovered a passage describing a ritualistic method of communication, involving a series of seemingly random events, each designed to convey a specific message to an initiated member. It was a chilling realization. The seemingly random nature of Vance and Moreau's deaths now appeared less random, and far more sinister. The killer wasn't just murdering, they were sending messages. This realization sparked a surge of adrenaline. Izzy felt a sudden, chilling awareness. She wasn't just investigating a crime, she was playing a game, a dangerous game of cat and mouse with an adversary who was not only highly intelligent but also possessed centuries of experience in manipulating events and remaining hidden. The killer was one step ahead, anticipating her moves, leading her down a path of seemingly endless clues, always keeping a crucial piece of the puzzle out of reach. The unsettling feeling intensified. Izzy began receiving cryptic messages, seemingly random occurrences that aligned with the ancient communication method she had discovered in the manuscript. A misplaced newspaper clipping, a specific song playing on the radio, a peculiar symbol drawn in chalk outside her apartment, all seemingly insignificant events, until she recognized their coded meaning. The messages were not threatening, not explicitly, but they served as reminders, subtle reminders that she was being watched, that her every move was being monitored, that the killer knew what she was doing, and more alarmingly, that they were always a step ahead. The effect was both unsettling and exhilarating. This wasn't just an investigation. It was a personal challenge, a deadly game of wits. One particularly chilling message came through a seemingly innocuous source. A vintage postcard depicting a crimson-crested pheasant, sent anonymously to her apartment. The postcard itself, the quality of the stamps and the paper, the subtle details of the handwriting, all pointed towards an intimate knowledge of her investigation, and the symbol itself, the crimson pheasant of the Order of the Crimson Dawn. The fear was real, visceral. It wasn't just the intellectual challenge, it was the genuine threat to her life. The killer wasn't just playing a game, they were playing for keeps. The thrill of the chase was overtaken by the chilling realization that she was fighting for survival. Izzy intensified her security, but the feeling of being watched never subsided. She felt a constant prickle on the back of her neck, a sense of impending doom that shadowed her every move. She began to question her team, her allies, even her closest confidants, wondering if someone among them was secretly working with the killer. The paranoia was insidious, a constant companion that gnawed at her peace of mind. One night, while working late in her office, Izzy heard a subtle noise outside her window. She froze, her heart pounding against her ribs. Peering cautiously through the blinds, she saw a fleeting shadow, a figure dressed in dark clothing, disappearing into the night. It was too quick, too fleeting to be sure, but the image burned itself into her memory. The game had escalated. The following days were filled with a heightened sense of anxiety. Izzy knew that the killer was getting closer, that the danger was imminent. She stepped up security, and yet, she could not shake the feeling of being watched, of being surrounded by unseen eyes. Her every move felt scrutinized, every breath measured. The line between her professional life and her personal safety had completely blurred. This wasn't just a case, it was a personal hunt. Izzy found herself battling against not only the killer but also against the pervasive feeling of helplessness, the sense that she was caught in a web of lies, a deadly game where every move could be her last. She was trapped in a maze of deception, where trust had become a luxury she could no longer afford, and where survival was her only goal. The shadows seemed to writhe and shift around her, the city's glittering lights casting long, menacing silhouettes that followed her every step, reminding her constantly of the ever-present danger that clung to her like a second skin. The crimson feather, once a mere clue, had become a symbol of this deadly game, a constant reminder of the chilling reality she faced. The Order of the Crimson Dawn was not just a historical footnote, it was a living entity, a clandestine network pulling the strings from the shadows, using murder as a twisted form of communication. Izzy knew that her only hope of escape, of victory, lay in uncovering the truth, but the truth was buried deep, obscured by centuries of deception and guarded by a killer who was not only ruthless but also terrifyingly clever. The game had become a desperate fight for survival. The stakes were higher than ever before, and Izzy knew that every breath she took was a gamble. The chase was far from over, and the hunter was now the hunted. The end of the game was far from sight, and its finality was hanging heavy in the air, a chilling reminder of the deadly dance that was yet to conclude. The weight of the investigation pressed down on Izzy, a suffocating blanket woven from paranoia and exhaustion. Sleep had become a luxury she couldn't afford, the crimson feather, a constant visual reminder of the danger, haunting her dreams. Each night, she'd wake in a cold sweat, the chilling image of the shadowy figure outside her window flashing behind her eyelids. The city, once a vibrant backdrop to her life, now felt like a claustrophobic cage, its glittering facade hiding a sinister underbelly teeming with secrets and lies. Days bled into weeks, each filled with a relentless pursuit of elusive clues. The team, once a cohesive unit, now felt fractured, riven by suspicion. Izzy found herself constantly analyzing every word, every gesture, every subtle shift in body language, searching for any hint of betrayal. The bond of trust, once unshakable, had crumbled, replaced by a chilling uncertainty that poisoned every interaction. Detective Miller, her most trusted colleague, became the focus of her scrutiny. His quiet efficiency, once a source of comfort, now seemed strangely calculated, almost too perfect. His eyes, usually bright and engaging, now held a guarded quality, a subtle distance that unnerved her. She noticed him lingering longer than usual in the evidence room, meticulously examining photographs, his fingers tracing the lines of the crimson feather, a gesture that felt far too intimate, too knowing. One afternoon, while reviewing surveillance footage from Vance's apartment building, Izzy spotted something peculiar. Miller was visible in the background, seemingly unobserved, but his actions were odd. He appeared to be subtly altering something, repositioning a small object near the victim's body, a detail that was completely absent from the original crime scene photos. The alteration was slight, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to ignite a flame of suspicion within her. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. Miller wasn't just a member of her team, he was a pawn, a carefully placed piece in the killer's intricate game. The thought was both shocking and terrifying. How long had he been involved? Had he been feeding information to the killer? Or was he acting independently, using his position to manipulate the investigation? Izzy decided to confront Miller directly. The conversation took place in her dimly lit office, late one evening, the city lights painting long shadows across the walls. She presented him with the evidence, the subtle alteration in the surveillance footage, the inconsistencies in his reported movements. He listened impassively, his face giving nothing away. "I need an explanation, Miller," Izzy said, her voice low and steady, masking the turmoil within. Miller remained silent for a moment, his gaze unwavering. Then, he let out a long, slow sigh. "It's more complicated than you think, Izzy," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Complicated how?" Izzy pressed, her grip tightening on the file containing the evidence. Miller's demeanor shifted. The calm facade shattered, replaced by a flicker of something darker, something akin to desperation. He confessed to being involved, not directly with the murders themselves, but with a much larger conspiracy, a network of individuals stretching far beyond the immediate circle of the investigation. He spoke of shadowy figures, ancient oaths, and forbidden rituals. He revealed the existence of an inner circle within the Order of the Crimson Dawn, a group whose power and influence extended far beyond anything Izzy had previously imagined. His involvement, he explained, stemmed from blackmail, a carefully orchestrated scheme to force his compliance. He had been trapped, his life and the lives of his loved ones held hostage. The revelation shattered Izzy's world. It wasn't just a murder case anymore, it was a war, a battle for survival against a relentless enemy that was far more powerful and insidious than she had ever imagined. The betrayal stung, the violation of trust leaving a raw wound. She had let her guard down, and in doing so, she had been manipulated, deceived, used. The information Miller provided was explosive, outlining the structure of the Order, their hidden networks, and their long-term goals. It also revealed a crucial piece of the puzzle, the identity of the mastermind behind the murders, a figure even more powerful and elusive than Izzy had dared to imagine. This information added another layer of complexity to the investigation. Izzy realized that she was battling against an enemy who was not just cunning and ruthless, but also deeply entrenched within the fabric of society. The lines between right and wrong, good and evil, were becoming increasingly blurred. The previously clear-cut boundaries of the investigation had dissolved, replaced by a swirling vortex of deception and betrayal. The revelation of Miller's involvement forced Izzy to re-evaluate everything she thought she knew. Every interaction, every piece of evidence, needed to be re-examined through this new lens of suspicion. She had to determine the extent of Miller's complicity, and whether there were other traitors lurking within her own team. The weight of her responsibility pressed down on her, heavier than ever before. She was not only fighting for justice, but also for her own survival, and the survival of those she still trusted. The game had evolved, becoming more dangerous, more personal. The trust, once a cornerstone of her investigation, was now a fragile thing, easily shattered. The intricate web of lies had ensnared her, and she knew that escaping it would require not only courage and determination but also a deep understanding of the enemy's tactics. Her initial shock gave way to a steely resolve. She couldn't afford to be paralyzed by betrayal, she had to use this new information to her advantage. Miller's confession, despite the betrayal, had opened a door to a deeper understanding of the Order, a crucial step towards unraveling the intricate web of deceit that had ensnared her. The chase continued, but the landscape had dramatically shifted. The hunt was no longer just about catching a killer. It was about surviving a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of power, a conspiracy where every friend could be an enemy, every ally a potential betrayer. The weight of the responsibility pressed down on her shoulders, the enormity of the task before her almost crushing. She felt the cold grip of fear, but it was mixed with a strange, exhilarating sense of purpose. This was no longer just a case, it was a war, a fight for survival against a formidable enemy. And Izzy, armed with a new understanding of the enemy's tactics and a renewed sense of determination, was ready to fight. The game had changed, but she was still in it. She would not back down. She would uncover the truth, even if it meant facing the darkest corners of the human soul. The stakes were impossibly high, the path ahead fraught with danger, but Izzy would not yield. She would expose the truth, regardless of the cost. The hunt was far from over. Chapter 3. The Price of Fame. The shrill ring of Izzy's phone sliced through the suffocating silence of her apartment, jarring her from a fitful sleep. It was 3 a.m. The caller ID displayed an unknown number, but her gut clenched. This wasn't a wrong number. This was the rhythm of the nightmare repeating itself. She answered, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. "Hello." A breathless voice, choked with fear, whispered, "They've done it again." Another one. The line went dead. Izzy's blood ran cold. Another victim. The crimson feather, the chilling signature of the killer, was taunting her, mocking her every attempt to stop him. This time, the city's vibrant pulse was muted, replaced by a dull, throbbing anxiety that resonated in the very bones of the city. The address was relayed to her through dispatch, a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, home to renowned violinist, Julian Vance's younger brother, Elias. The scene was eerily familiar. The pristine apartment, marred by a single, stark crimson feather lying next to the lifeless body. Elias Vance, his face serene, almost peaceful in death, bore the same chilling mark across his throat, a precise incision, an artistic touch that spoke of a cold, calculated mind. The media frenzy that had followed Vance's murder exploded into a maelstrom of speculation and fear. Every news channel was broadcasting the gruesome details, plastering Elias's image across their screens. The city, already gripped by fear, now teetered on the edge of panic. The pressure on Izzy and her team was immense. The mayor's office was breathing down their necks, demanding answers, fueling the flames of public anxiety with their impatient demands for swift resolution. Each passing hour felt like a lifetime, the weight of the city's fear crushing her under its weight. Izzy arrived at the scene, the flashing lights of police cars painting the night sky in a macabre spectacle. The yellow tape, a stark barrier between the living and the dead, felt more like a symbol of her own failure. She pushed past the uniformed officers, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The air hung heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the cloying sweetness of expensive perfume, a jarring juxtaposition of elegance and death. The medical examiner, Dr. Albright, a gaunt woman with tired eyes, emerged from the bedroom. Her expression was grim. "Same M.O., she confirmed, her voice hushed. "Precise incision, minimal blood loss." He was clearly a skilled professional. She handed Izzy a small, crimson feather, identical to the one found at Vance's apartment. The feather, a stark symbol of the killer's chilling artistry, seemed to pulse with a dark energy, a macabre reminder of the carnage unfolding beneath the city's glittering surface. The similarities between the two murders were unsettlingly precise. The same methodical approach, the same chilling signature, the same calculated precision. The killer wasn't just murdering, he was creating a masterpiece of death, meticulously crafting each scene to send a message, a perverse declaration of dominance. Back at the precinct, Izzy pored over the evidence, the details swimming before her eyes. The pressure mounted, a suffocating weight that threatened to crush her. She had to find a connection, a thread that would unravel this terrifying pattern before another life was taken. Every detail was scrutinized, the time of death, the positioning of the body, the lack of forced entry, all pointed towards a killer who was both meticulous and audacious. The investigation stalled. Each lead proved to be a dead end. The initial witness statements were vague, offering little more than fleeting glimpses of a shadowy figure. The forensic evidence yielded nothing conclusive. The killer's meticulous preparation made him almost invisible, a ghost haunting the city's affluent neighborhoods. The lack of progress further fueled the media frenzy. Izzy found herself dodging aggressive reporters, each question a sharp jab to her already frayed nerves. Her image, once a symbol of competence and determination, was now under attack, portrayed as a symbol of failure. The pressure to solve the case, to appease the public outcry, was immense. The city demanded answers, and Izzy was running out of time. She focused on the one concrete detail, the crimson feather. Its presence, in both crime scenes, was far more than a gruesome signature. It was a calling card, a defiant proclamation. Izzy felt a deep-seated unease as she examined the feather once more, placing it under a microscope, hoping to discover a clue that could identify the killer, or at least, pinpoint the origin of the feather. Days bled into sleepless nights. Izzy pushed herself to the brink, fueled by adrenaline and sheer determination. She re-examined every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every phone record. She worked through files, reviewing previous cold cases, looking for links, patterns, anything that could provide a vital clue. The pressure to find the killer, and to protect the city from his relentless assault, weighed heavily upon her. Miller, despite his past confession, remained a valuable asset, his knowledge of the order proving invaluable. However, Izzy couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something, that his involvement ran deeper than he had let on. She kept him at arm's length, monitoring his every move, the betrayal lingering like a phantom pain. While examining the financial records of both Vance brothers, Izzy noticed a pattern. Both brothers had made significant investments in a newly established art foundation, the Crimson Dawn Society. The name sent a chill down her spine. The same name Miller had whispered in his confession. It was more than a coincidence. It was a link, a crucial piece of the puzzle. Izzy ordered a full investigation into the Crimson Dawn Society. The information that surfaced was shocking. It was not just an art foundation, but a secretive organization with ties to influential figures in the city. The charity was used as a front to mask illegal activities, and the involvement extended far beyond what Izzy had anticipated. This realization solidified the connection between Miller's involvement and the murders. Miller had not been merely blackmailed but had been deeply embroiled in the organization's dark underbelly. The investigation intensified, revealing a network of corruption and deceit that stretched to the highest echelons of power in the city. The Crimson Dawn Society was not just a group of wealthy art patrons but a tightly knit group of individuals involved in something far more sinister. The investigation had expanded into a wider conspiracy than anyone had imagined, a labyrinth of power and influence that challenged everything Izzy believed about justice and the people she trusted. The urgency of the situation forced Izzy to push the boundaries of her investigation, walking a tightrope between legality and desperation. The lines blurred between right and wrong, her pursuit of justice threatened by the sheer power and influence of the Crimson Dawn Society. She felt the weight of the city's safety and the fate of countless victims resting heavily upon her shoulders. Her determination hardened, her resolve strengthened, fueled by a cocktail of adrenaline, fear, and desperation. This wasn't just a murder investigation, it was a war against a powerful, insidious enemy operating in the shadows, an enemy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the city. The fight was far from over, the stakes impossibly high, but Izzy was ready. The chase continued, driven by a relentless need for justice, even if it meant facing the darkest corners of the city's underbelly. The Crimson Dawn Society. The name echoed in Izzy's mind, a chilling mantra that resonated with the unsettling rhythm of the murders. She delved deeper into the organization's records, each document revealing a new layer of deception, a deeper twist in the already tangled web of conspiracy. The society's charitable facade masked a network of illicit activities, its influence stretching far beyond the art world. It was a spider's web, meticulously woven, its threads connecting to the most powerful figures in the city, politicians, businessmen, even members of the judiciary. Izzy discovered that both Julian and Elias Vance, along with several other victims whose deaths had initially been ruled as suicides or accidents, were members of the Crimson Dawn Society. But their involvement wasn't as simple as mere patronage. They had access to information that was both highly sensitive and potentially incriminating. It appeared they were on the verge of exposing the society's true nature, their silence bought with promises of fame and fortune, and ultimately, silenced with a crimson feather and a precise incision. The investigation led Izzy down a rabbit hole of offshore accounts, encrypted communications, and coded messages. She unearthed evidence of blackmail, bribery, and even murder, all meticulously orchestrated by the organization's shadowy leaders. The victims weren't just targets, they were pawns in a larger game of power and control. The Crimson Dawn Society wasn't simply a criminal enterprise, it was a sophisticated, highly organized syndicate that had infiltrated the very heart of the city's elite. One of the most shocking discoveries was the society's historical ties to a decades-old political scandal. Documents dating back to the 1960s revealed a complex network of corruption that had entangled several prominent families, including those whose names were now synonymous with the city's power elite. The scandal had been meticulously covered up, its details buried beneath layers of misinformation and carefully orchestrated silence. The Crimson Dawn Society had used its influence to maintain control, using its vast wealth and network of connections to eliminate anyone who posed a threat to their secrecy. Izzy realized that the murders weren't random acts of violence, they were targeted assassinations. The victims, each possessing compromising information about the society, were eliminated systematically, their deaths meticulously staged to appear as accidents or suicides. The crimson feather wasn't merely a signature, it was a symbol of their silenced voices, a chilling reminder of the society's power and ruthlessness. As she delved deeper, Izzy uncovered a pattern in the victims' connections. They weren't just wealthy patrons, they were all somehow related to a series of controversial land deals orchestrated by the city during the 1980s. These deals, shrouded in secrecy and ambiguity, were profitable beyond measure but riddled with unethical practices and potential illegalities. It turned out that the victims had stumbled upon evidence of this corruption, evidence that threatened to unravel the meticulously crafted illusion of legitimacy that surrounded the Crimson Dawn Society and its powerful members. Izzy's investigation intensified, leading her down increasingly dangerous paths. She found herself working late into the night, the flickering light from her computer screen illuminating the weary lines on her face. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford. The weight of the city's fate, and the lives of countless potential victims, rested heavily on her shoulders. She was on the verge of unraveling a conspiracy that stretched back decades, a conspiracy so vast and entrenched that it threatened to engulf the entire city. The pressure mounted from all sides. The mayor's office, initially eager for a swift resolution, grew increasingly impatient and increasingly agitated. The media, sensing a massive story, hounded Izzy day and night, their relentless pursuit adding to her already immense burden. Her personal life suffered, the demands of the case consuming her every waking moment, leaving her little time for anything else. The line between her professional and personal life had blurred entirely, leaving her feeling increasingly isolated and vulnerable. But Izzy persevered, driven by a fierce sense of justice and an unwavering determination to bring the perpetrators to account. She began to suspect that the Crimson Dawn Society's influence extended even beyond the city limits, its tentacles reaching into state and national politics. She uncovered evidence suggesting that the society used its wealth and influence to manipulate elections, influence legislation, and even control law enforcement. The scope of the conspiracy was breathtaking, its implications terrifying. The risks were immense. Izzy knew she was dealing with an organization capable of anything, an organization with the resources and reach to make her disappear without a trace. But she refused to back down. She continued her investigation, meticulously documenting every piece of evidence, every lead, every clue, knowing that she was walking a tightrope. One wrong step could be her last. Working closely with Miller, despite her reservations about his past involvement, proved crucial. His knowledge of the society's inner workings provided invaluable insights, helping her navigate the labyrinthine corridors of power and corruption. But even Miller's knowledge was limited, and it became clear that there were still layers of the conspiracy that remained hidden, guarded by layers of secrecy and deception that could only be unlocked by uncovering the most hidden truths. Izzy was operating in uncharted territory, venturing into a world of shadowy figures and hidden agendas, where loyalty was a fluid concept and betrayal was expected. She relied on her instincts, her sharp intellect, and her unwavering determination to unravel the intricate web of deception. She had to find the source of the Crimson Dawn Society's influence, the linchpin that held the entire conspiracy together. A chance encounter with an old friend, a former journalist who had covered the original political scandal decades ago, yielded a vital breakthrough. The journalist, now retired and living a quiet life, had a trove of old documents and recordings that shed light on the society's origins and its long-standing connections to powerful figures. This new information confirmed Izzy's suspicions. The Crimson Dawn Society wasn't just a modern criminal enterprise but a legacy of decades of corruption, a shadow organization that had worked in the shadows, silently pulling strings and manipulating events from the background for decades. The journalist's information implicated the city's current mayor, a man who had built his career on a reputation of integrity and incorruptibility. This revelation shook Izzy to her core. The conspiracy was far more pervasive than she had ever imagined, reaching to the very pinnacle of city government. The stakes had just gotten exponentially higher. The mayor, a man she had once respected, was now a prime suspect. The implications were staggering. The fight for justice now threatened to turn into a battle for the very soul of the city. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Izzy discovered a hidden vault beneath the Crimson Dawn Society's headquarters. Inside, she found documents that detailed the organization's meticulously planned operations, spanning decades, including the murders she had been investigating. The documents revealed a chilling pattern of eliminating anyone who threatened to expose their secrets, a calculated and ruthless campaign to maintain their control and power. The investigation was coming to a head. Izzy had gathered enough evidence to bring down the Crimson Dawn Society, but the risk was immense. The society's reach extended into every corner of city life. Their ability to obstruct justice was almost limitless. She knew she was facing a battle she might not win, but she was determined to fight anyway. The fate of the city and the victims, both past and present, rested on her shoulders. The fight was far from over, but Izzy was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant facing the wrath of a powerful and ruthless organization. The city's future, its very soul, depended on it. The biting wind whipped around Izzy as she sprinted through the labyrinthine alleys behind City Hall, the city's glittering skyline a stark contrast to the grimy shadows that clung to her heels. The screech of tires, a guttural roar that ripped through the night's quiet, sent a jolt of adrenaline through her. A black SUV, its headlights like predatory eyes, cut a sharp turn, almost clipping her as she scrambled over a discarded dumpster. She wasn't sure how long she'd been running, only that the pounding of her heart was a deafening drum against the backdrop of the city's nocturnal hum. This wasn't the first time she'd felt the icy breath of death on her neck. Just 2 days ago, a seemingly innocuous package delivered to her apartment had nearly ended her life. The explosion, though contained, had shattered windows and left her shaken but alive, a stark reminder of the lengths the Crimson Dawn Society would go to silence her. Miller, ever the pragmatist, had insisted on increased security, but Izzy knew that no amount of protection could fully shield her from the reach of such a powerful and ruthless organization. She trusted Miller, or at least she trusted his intentions. But even his connections had limits against this enemy. Her pursuers were relentless. The SUV's persistent pursuit became a deadly game of cat and mouse, a frantic chase through the city's underbelly. She darted through narrow passageways, weaving between overflowing trash cans and precarious stacks of building materials, her breath ragged, her muscles screaming in protest. Each alley presented a new challenge, a new obstacle, a new risk. She relied on her instincts, her knowledge of the city's backstreets, honed over years of investigative work. She was a shadow, a ghost moving through the city's darker corners, barely visible in the gloom. She found herself in a deserted construction site, the skeletal framework of a half-built building looming overhead like a macabre monument. The ground was uneven, littered with debris, making her progress slow and treacherous. But the alternative, being caught, was far worse. She could hear the SUV approaching, the sound growing louder, closer, more menacing. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity as she scanned her surroundings, desperate for an escape route. Then, she saw it, a gap in the fence, hidden behind a pile of rubble. It was a risky move, a gamble. But it was her only chance. She launched herself over the rubble, scrambling through the gap just as the SUV screeched to a halt at the entrance to the construction site. The headlights swung wildly, illuminating the empty space where she had just been. She pressed herself against the cold, damp earth, her heart hammering against her ribs. They were searching, their frustration palpable in the guttural shouts that echoed through the night. The chase continued, a terrifying ballet of near misses and close calls. A speeding taxi narrowly avoided a collision with her as she darted across a busy street, the horn blaring a warning that sent shivers down her spine. She slipped through a crowded market, the cacophony of sounds and smells providing a chaotic cover, a temporary respite from her pursuers. She was becoming increasingly aware that this wasn't just an attempt to silence her, it was a deliberate escalation, a message. In a darkened alley, she found herself cornered. The SUV had boxed her in, its headlights piercing the darkness, their menacing glare promising an imminent end. But Izzy, never one to surrender, refused to give up. Using her training and quick thinking, she hurled a brick, shattering the rear window of the SUV, causing the vehicle to swerve out of control. The momentary confusion bought her the time she needed. She vanished into the labyrinthine network of alleys, leaving her pursuers baffled and frustrated. Another close call involved a seemingly accidental encounter at a coffee shop. A seemingly harmless barista offered her a steaming mug of cappuccino, but the subtle tremor in his hand and the glint of something metallic in his apron pocket alerted her. She managed to subtly spill the coffee, creating a diversion that allowed her to flee, leaving the barista and his accomplice behind to curse in frustration. She didn't linger, and didn't look back. Each encounter was a gamble, a test of her wits and reflexes. Each failure a potential death sentence. She spent the next few days in hiding, using safe houses provided by Miller, constantly shifting locations. The city felt like a pressure cooker, the threat palpable, ever present. The thrill of the chase was now replaced by a gnawing fear that bled into exhaustion and frustration. The weight of the investigation, the danger, the relentless pursuit, it was a burden she carried alone, a burden that threatened to crush her. One night, while reviewing the journalist's documents, Izzy stumbled upon a hidden detail, a coded message tucked away in the marginalia of an old news clipping. The message, deciphered using a complex algorithm, revealed a secret meeting location, a rendezvous point used by high-ranking members of the Crimson Dawn Society. It was a risk, a dangerous one, but Izzy was reaching the end of her rope. This could be her only chance to turn the tide. The location, an abandoned warehouse on the city's docks, a place shrouded in shadows and steeped in the smell of salt and decay. That night, she met Miller at the warehouse. The air hung heavy with anticipation, and a sense of impending doom. They approached cautiously, aware that they were walking into a viper's nest, a place where betrayal was not just a possibility, but a probability. As they moved through the decaying building, they could hear muffled voices, the low murmur of conspiracy weaving a menacing tapestry around them. The deeper they went, the more palpable the sense of danger became. The stench of decay was overwhelmed by the heavy perfume of fear. They were caught in a trap, surrounded by Crimson Dawn operatives, their faces hidden behind masks. The cold glint of steel threatened their lives. A deadly standoff, a dance with death. Izzy had hoped to use this as a chance to turn the tide, but she was facing overwhelming odds. As guns were drawn, and a shot rang out, the fight for survival began. This was it, the ultimate test of her wit, her skill, her strength. This was the final confrontation, a fight to the death, a clash between justice and unbridled corruption. The city's fate, and her own, hung precariously in the balance. The warehouse reeked of decay and desperation, a fitting backdrop for the deadly game unfolding within its crumbling walls. Miller, his face grim, signaled Izzy to stay low, his hand never leaving the grip of his concealed weapon. The muffled voices, previously a distant murmur, now resonated with chilling clarity, the words weaving a tapestry of threats and hushed commands. They moved cautiously through the maze of rusted machinery and stacked crates, the shadows playing tricks on their eyes, blurring the lines between reality and paranoia. Izzy felt a prickle of unease, a feeling that went beyond the immediate threat of the Crimson Dawn operatives. Something felt off. It wasn't just the palpable tension, the imminent danger, there was a deeper undercurrent, a sense of foreboding that chilled her to the bone. This wasn't just a random ambush. It was meticulously planned, orchestrated with a precision that suggested more than a simple act of intimidation. As they neared the center of the warehouse, a large, open space dominated by a single, flickering bulb, they found themselves facing a group of masked figures. The air crackled with anticipation, the silence punctuated only by the rhythmic drip of water from a leaky pipe. Izzy's eyes scanned the figures, searching for any telltale sign, any clue that might offer a glimpse into their motive. The masks hid their identities, but she could feel the weight of their collective malice, a tangible force that pressed down on them, suffocating them in its icy grip. Then, one of the figures stepped forward, removing their mask to reveal a face that sent a jolt of recognition through Izzy. It was Silas, a journalist Izzy had met briefly during her investigation, a man known for his relentless pursuit of truth, a man who had disappeared without a trace just weeks before the package exploded in her apartment. The connection was shocking, unexpected, jarring. Silas was alive, but clearly working with the Crimson Dawn Society. Why? Silas's eyes, cold and devoid of emotion, met hers. It seems the little bird finally found her way to the nest, he sneered, a cruel twist to his lips. You've been so busy chasing shadows, Izzy. You haven't bothered to look behind them. His voice, though low, carried a chilling weight. It was a statement, an accusation, a threat. This was a turning point. The fight wasn't simply about survival now, it was about understanding. The puzzle pieces suddenly started clicking together. Silas's presence wasn't just a surprise, it was the key to unlocking the mystery behind the Crimson Dawn Society's relentless pursuit. His betrayal pointed towards a deeper conspiracy, a network of corruption that stretched far beyond the organization itself. Izzy's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of information she had gathered. The victims, the coded messages, the seemingly random attacks, they weren't random at all. They were meticulously chosen, each one connected by an unseen thread, a secret shared among a select few. Silas's involvement was the missing link. She recalled her initial investigation into the journalist who had been investigating the Crimson Dawn Society, and the subsequent death of said journalist. She had discovered that this journalist was on the verge of exposing a massive scandal, but there wasn't much else to go on after the discovery of the journalist's death. It was time to revisit the trail. She began to delve deeper into the lives of the victims, poring over old case files, newspaper clippings, and personal journals. She uncovered a web of deceit and betrayal, hidden relationships and long-forgotten grievances. Each victim had a dark secret, a hidden past, a connection that she hadn't initially noticed. The victims had all worked for the same advertising firm that dealt in highly sensitive and secret information. What had they been working on? She discovered that each victim had been working on a clandestine project for a high-profile client, a project that involved leaked confidential information. The nature of the project remained shrouded in mystery, obscured by coded language and intricate financial transactions. But the pattern was clear. Each victim had access to information that could expose a significant scandal, a scandal that would implicate powerful individuals and institutions. The Crimson Dawn Society wasn't just eliminating threats, they were protecting something, someone, a secret so vast, that they were willing to commit murder to keep it hidden. The more Izzy investigated, the more she realized that the killer wasn't just targeting journalists or whistleblowers. The victims represented a much broader group, each holding a key piece of the puzzle. She started to notice a pattern amongst the victims. They had all been connected to the same small-time lawyer. A lawyer who had passed away years before the first murder, seemingly from natural causes. It was too convenient. This lawyer had dealt with many cases relating to the same advertising agency that her current victims had worked for. His death was not a coincidence. She found the lawyer's old case files, documents that had been meticulously sealed and stored away in a forgotten archive. The files revealed a tangled network of relationships, financial transactions, and secret agreements, all linked to the Crimson Dawn Society. The lawyer had been the linchpin, the silent guardian of a secret that stretched back decades. He had held the key to a conspiracy so large, so entrenched, that it threatened to unravel the foundations of the city, perhaps even the country. Izzy's investigation took a dramatic turn when she discovered a hidden compartment within the lawyer's old desk, a compartment containing a series of encrypted messages. The messages, after painstaking decryption, revealed a secret offshore account, an account linked to numerous high-ranking officials and prominent figures. The account was overflowing with money that could only have been acquired through illegal activities. The trail led Izzy to a previously unknown branch of the Crimson Dawn Society, a group operating from the shadows, pulling the strings from a remote, secure location. The revelation sent a chill down Izzy's spine. The stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. She was no longer just chasing a killer, she was fighting a system that had woven its way into the very fabric of the city. The fight was becoming more than just her own, it was the city against an unknown, unseen enemy. This was a battle for the soul of the city, a battle that could determine the destiny of millions. The information she had uncovered was dangerous, potent, and could potentially topple the city's most powerful institutions. She had to tread carefully, playing her cards right, ensuring that she didn't become another victim of the Crimson Dawn Society. She had to find a way to expose the truth without jeopardizing her own life or the lives of those around her. With the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, Izzy found herself staring into the abyss, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. This wasn't just a game of cat and mouse anymore, this was a fight for survival, a fight for justice, a fight for the soul of the city. And she was determined to win. The revelation of Silas's betrayal, the discovery of the lawyer's hidden secrets, and the emergence of the offshore account, it was all pointing towards a much larger conspiracy, a conspiracy that reached the highest echelons of power. This was a fight she could not afford to lose. The city's fate, and her own, hung in the balance. The warehouse air hung heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid scent of fear. Silas's words, a venomous sting, echoed in Izzy's ears, even as the adrenaline began to ebb, leaving behind a chilling emptiness. She hadn't just faced down the Crimson Dawn, she'd stared into the heart of her own past, a past she'd tried so desperately to bury beneath layers of professional success and carefully constructed detachment. Silas's betrayal wasn't just a professional setback, it was a brutal rip in the fabric of her carefully constructed reality. She found herself leaning against a crumbling support beam, the cold, damp concrete seeping into her bones, mirroring the icy chill that had settled in her heart. The roar of the city, usually a comforting backdrop to her solitary existence, now felt distant, muffled, as if a thick fog had separated her from the world outside. The masked figures, momentarily forgotten in the shock of Silas's revelation, loomed in her memory like phantoms, their menacing silence a stark contrast to the storm raging within her. Her mind drifted back to the orphanage, a cold, gray place where hugs were scarce and smiles were a rare commodity. The memories came unbidden, flooding back with a force that threatened to overwhelm her. The hushed whispers, the fear in the eyes of the other children, the gnawing emptiness in her own stomach. She remembered the ever-present fear of another beating, the constant uncertainty, the chilling loneliness that had become her constant companion. She had learned early on that the only person she could truly rely on was herself, a lesson etched deeply into her very being. That self-reliance, that unwavering independence, had become her shield, her armor against a world that had shown her little kindness. It had propelled her forward, driven her to excel, to achieve. It had made her a shrewd investigator, a woman capable of confronting the most dangerous criminals and unraveling the most intricate conspiracies. But that same shield, that unwavering self-reliance, had also become her prison, isolating her from genuine connection, from vulnerability, from love. The walls she had built to protect herself were now suffocating her. The explosion in her apartment hadn't just shattered her sense of security, it had cracked open the carefully constructed facade she had presented to the world. It had exposed the deep-seated fear that had always lurked beneath the surface, a fear she'd learned to suppress, to bury beneath layers of determination and cold logic. Now, facing Silas, she realized the extent to which that fear had shaped her, her choices, her life. She had chased shadows, yes, but those shadows were reflections of her own unspoken fears, her own unresolved traumas. The Crimson Dawn's pursuit hadn't been random, it had been targeted, calculated, a meticulous dissection of her vulnerabilities. They had exploited her past, her deepest insecurities, using her own fears as weapons against her. She understood now why they had chosen her, why they had targeted her specifically. It wasn't just her investigative skills, it was her psychological profile, her vulnerabilities, her carefully concealed weaknesses. She had been the perfect prey. The weight of this realization settled heavily on her shoulders, a crushing burden that threatened to crush her. But amid the despair, a flicker of defiance ignited within her. This wasn't the end, it was a beginning. Facing her demons, acknowledging her vulnerabilities, wasn't a sign of weakness, it was an act of courage, a crucial step toward reclaiming her life, her future. She stood up, the cold concrete no longer feeling quite as oppressive. The city sounds, still distant, felt less menacing, less isolating. She had survived this encounter, not just physically, but emotionally. The fight hadn't ended, it had merely shifted gears. It was no longer just about uncovering the conspiracy, about bringing down the Crimson Dawn, it was also about confronting her own inner demons, about healing the wounds of her past. The image of the lawyer, the man whose death had seemed so innocent, flashed in her mind. His connection to the advertising agency, the sealed files, the hidden compartment, the encrypted messages, it all painted a picture of a vast, intricate web of corruption, a spider's silk spun with meticulous care, each thread representing a hidden secret, a concealed transaction, a life carefully orchestrated and then abruptly cut short. The lawyer had been a silent guardian, a keeper of secrets, his death a carefully staged event. The offshore account, overflowing with illicit funds, represented the heart of the conspiracy, a pulsing core of greed and power. She recalled the victims, their faces blending into a single tapestry of deceit and betrayal. The journalist, Silas's former colleague who had died before he could reveal his findings. Each death, she realized now, had been designed to protect the secret, to maintain the illusion of order, to safeguard the immense power held within that offshore account. The information she held was explosive, dangerous enough to shatter the city's elite and unravel the very foundation of its power structure. She had to act carefully, strategically, weighing each move, each decision with extreme caution. She couldn't risk becoming another victim, another pawn in the Crimson Dawn's deadly game. Her journey to expose the truth would require more than just investigative skills. It demanded a level of courage and resilience she hadn't known she possessed. It was a journey into the heart of darkness, a descent into the abyss, a confrontation with the very worst aspects of human nature. But Izzy was ready. She had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back, but it had failed to break her. The fight for justice, for the city's soul, was now deeply intertwined with her own personal battle for healing and self-acceptance. The two struggles were no longer separate entities but integral parts of a single, unified crusade. She would expose the truth, not just for the sake of the city but for herself, for the little girl who had learned to survive by building walls around her heart. She would dismantle the Crimson Dawn, not just because they were murderers and manipulators but because their actions were a cruel echo of the cruelty and indifference she had endured in her own past. This was a battle for survival, yes, but also a battle for redemption, a fight for a future where the echoes of the past would no longer haunt her. She left the warehouse, the city lights blurring slightly as the aftershock of her emotional upheaval still reverberated within her. She had faced her demons, and she was ready to fight. The path ahead remained uncertain, treacherous, but she was no longer alone. She had found a strength within herself, a reservoir of resilience she hadn't known she possessed. She would unravel the conspiracy, she would expose the truth. And she would emerge stronger, whole, finally free from the shadows of her past. The game was far from over, But Izzy, for the first time in a long time, felt a surge of hope amidst the darkness. The fight was on. Chapter 4. The Unveiling. The biting wind whipped around Izzy as she emerged from the warehouse, the city's cacophony a stark contrast to the suffocating silence she'd just left behind. Silas's words, his chilling betrayal, echoed in her mind, a constant, unwelcome soundtrack to her racing thoughts. He hadn't just been a collaborator, he'd been a puppet master, pulling strings from the shadows, manipulating events to serve his own dark agenda. But who was pulling his strings? That was the question that gnawed at her, a relentless, persistent ache in the center of her being. The evidence, she realized, had been there all along, subtly woven into the fabric of the case, hidden in plain sight. She had dismissed it initially, blinded by her focus on the Crimson Dawn, on the masked figures who had terrorized her apartment and haunted her dreams. But now, with Silas's confession serving as a jarring key, the pieces began to fall into place, revealing a pattern, a design, a horrifying truth. It started with the lawyer, the seemingly innocuous death that had served as the initial catalyst for her investigation. His connection to the advertising agency, initially dismissed as a mere coincidence, now seemed far more significant, a pivotal link in a chain of carefully orchestrated events. The sealed files, the hidden compartment in his desk, the encrypted messages, they all pointed to a single, chilling conclusion: the lawyer had known too much. He'd been silenced. Izzy remembered the details of his death, the staged robbery, the lack of forced entry, the precise placement of the body. It wasn't a chaotic crime, it was a meticulously planned execution. And the killer, she realized with a shudder, hadn't been acting alone. The entire operation had been expertly coordinated, a symphony of deceit and violence orchestrated by a master manipulator. Then there was the journalist, Silas's former colleague, whose untimely death had initially seemed to be an unfortunate coincidence, a tragic loss of a promising career. But now, in the light of Silas's revelation, his death took on a new significance. He, too, had stumbled onto something dangerous enough to warrant a swift, silent elimination. He'd been a threat, a loose end, and the Crimson Dawn had moved to neutralize him, swiftly and efficiently. Each victim, she realized with growing horror, had been carefully chosen, each death strategically timed and executed. They were all connected, bound together by an invisible thread, a secret that stretched back decades, threading through the city's elite, its power brokers, and its hidden, shadowy underbelly. The offshore account, overflowing with illicit funds, was the heart of the matter, the beating pulse of a vast conspiracy that dwarfed anything she had ever encountered. The killer, Izzy knew, wasn't simply a hired gun, a mindless assassin. This was someone far more sophisticated, far more insidious. Someone with access to power, influence, and resources. Someone who could orchestrate deaths, manipulate events, and control information with chilling precision. The name, when it finally clicked into place, hit her like a physical blow. It was a name she knew, a name she'd encountered countless times in her investigations, a name whispered in hushed tones in the city's darkest corners. It was a name that resonated with power, with influence, with untouchable wealth. It was Marcus Thorne. The city's most revered philanthropist, a man known for his charitable donations, his commitment to public service, his seemingly unblemished reputation. A man who hid behind a carefully constructed facade of respectability, a man whose true nature was a viper lurking beneath a velvet glove. The evidence, though circumstantial, was overwhelming. Thorne's connections to the advertising agency were undeniable, his financial ties to the offshore account were undeniable. His presence, though subtle, was apparent in every stage of the conspiracy. There were the encrypted messages, traced back to Thorne's private server, messages that revealed his involvement in silencing anyone who threatened to expose his criminal activities. There were the financial records, meticulously forged to conceal the flow of illicit funds. And there were the witnesses, though reluctant, who placed Thorne near the scenes of the crimes, his movements carefully orchestrated to avoid suspicion. Izzy felt a cold wave of dread wash over her, the weight of the revelation heavy on her shoulders. To expose Thorn meant confronting not just a ruthless killer but the city's power structure itself, a network of individuals complicit in his crimes, protected by his immense wealth and influence. The stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. Exposing Thorn wasn't just a matter of bringing a killer to justice, it was about dismantling an empire built on deceit, corruption, and murder. It meant facing down not just one man, but a formidable army of accomplices who would stop at nothing to protect their positions of power. She was up against not only Thorn's personal security detail but also a network of lawyers, politicians, and businessmen who would gladly assist in silencing her permanently. The magnitude of the task was daunting. But Izzy, despite the chilling reality of the situation, refused to be intimidated. She had faced down the Crimson Dawn, she had confronted her own demons, and she would not be deterred by a man whose wealth and power were nothing more than a gilded cage masking his true, depraved nature. The realization that Thorn was the mastermind behind everything galvanized her. It gave her a renewed sense of purpose, a driving force that pushed back against the overwhelming feeling of dread. The seemingly random acts of violence, the seemingly unconnected deaths, were now unified under a single, chilling banner: Marcus Thorn's ambition. But how would she prove it? The evidence, while strong, wasn't airtight. She needed something definitive, something undeniable, something that would force the city's elite to abandon their complicity and support the truth. She knew she was facing a formidable opponent, a man who had played the game for decades, mastering the art of deception, manipulating events to his advantage. He was a master of strategy, a puppeteer who could make entire organizations dance to his tune. Yet, even a master puppeteer needed strings. Izzy was determined to find them, unravel them, and expose him for the monster he truly was. The journey ahead would be treacherous, fraught with danger. She knew she might not survive. But Izzy had stared into the abyss and faced her own past. She was no longer the frightened girl from the orphanage. She was a woman forged in the fires of adversity, fueled by an unwavering sense of justice. And she was ready to fight. The thought of Thorn's carefully constructed image crumbling, his empire collapsing, fueled her resolve. This wasn't just about bringing a killer to justice, it was about reclaiming the city, cleansing it of the corruption that had festered for too long, hidden beneath a veneer of wealth and respectability. She reviewed her notes, meticulously piecing together the timeline of events, looking for inconsistencies, for missing links, for anything that could solidify her suspicions. Each piece of evidence, however small, now held immense significance, each detail a potential key to unlocking the full truth. She needed to verify her findings, to ensure she had her facts straight before confronting Thorn, before taking her findings to the authorities, to the people who might actually have the power to stop him. She spent the next few days relentlessly pursuing every lead, poring over documents, interviewing witnesses, following trails that led her through dimly lit back alleys and into the opulent mansions of the city's elite. Each step brought her closer to the truth, but each step also brought her closer to danger. She felt the eyes of the Crimson Dawn upon her, even though the masked figures had retreated. She knew Thorn would be watching, waiting, ready to strike. The stakes were incredibly high. Her life was on the line, her career, everything she had built for herself. But the thought of countless victims, silenced, forgotten, fueled her determination. She wouldn't stop until she had exposed Thorn, until she had brought him to justice. She felt a surge of grim satisfaction as the pieces began to fall into place, forming a complete picture, confirming her suspicions. She had found the definitive proof. A series of encrypted emails detailing Thorn's instructions to his operatives, outlining each assassination, each carefully planned operation, detailing the bribes and payoffs, proving his involvement in a network of corruption that extended from the highest echelons of power all the way down to the street level. The evidence was overwhelming, irrefutable. But presenting this evidence would be risky. Thorn was a master manipulator. He could easily discredit her, frame her, or worse. She needed a plan, a strategy to ensure her own safety while bringing Thorn down. This was not just an investigation anymore, it was a war. And Izzy was ready to fight. She knew she was walking a tightrope, one wrong move could be her last. But she also knew, with a certainty that sent a shiver of adrenaline through her veins, that she could win. She had faced her own inner demons. She had survived betrayal. She had overcome fear. Marcus Thorne, she vowed, would be her final victory. The fight had begun. The encrypted emails, a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, detailed Thorne's meticulous planning, his chilling pragmatism in eliminating anyone who posed a threat. They revealed a network of corruption so vast, so deeply entrenched, it made the Crimson Dawn seem like a child's game. The emails spoke of silenced journalists, intimidated witnesses, and compromised officials, all orchestrated with a chilling efficiency that bordered on artistry. But amidst the damning evidence, Izzy found something else, something unexpected, a detail so subtle it had almost been overlooked. A name, recurring in several emails, a name that didn't belong to any of the known associates or operatives. A name that sent a jolt of icy dread through her. It was Elias Vance. Elias Vance was a name Izzy recognized, though vaguely. He was a renowned architect, celebrated for his breathtaking designs, a darling of the city's elite, a man whose name was synonymous with elegance and sophistication. He was also Thorne's closest confidant, a man rumored to be the architect behind Thorne's sprawling philanthropic empire, the unseen hand guiding the flow of funds and influence. The connection between Vance and the killings was baffling. Why would an architect, a man seemingly removed from the world of crime and intrigue, be involved in such a brutal conspiracy? The answer, Izzy realized, lay in the nature of Vance's work. His designs were not merely aesthetic, they were strategic, incorporating hidden passageways, concealed compartments, and ingenious security systems. Izzy recalled Vance's signature style, the use of intricate geometric patterns, the strategic placement of structural elements, the seemingly random yet precisely calculated details that made his buildings both visually stunning and functionally impenetrable. These weren't mere design choices, they were tactical maneuvers. His buildings were fortresses, meticulously crafted to protect Thorne's secrets and conceal his crimes. His architectural designs, Izzy realized, were not just buildings, they were instruments of crime. The hidden tunnels and secret rooms provided escape routes for Thorne and his operatives, safe havens for illicit meetings, and secure storage for incriminating evidence. Vance wasn't just an architect, he was a collaborator, a partner in crime, a master craftsman whose talent was used to facilitate a reign of terror. The lawyer's office, for instance, had been meticulously designed with a hidden compartment, the perfect hiding place for the incriminating files. The journalist's apartment, similarly, featured a series of cleverly concealed vents that had been used to facilitate his silent elimination. Vance had designed these spaces not merely for aesthetic appeal but with a sinister purpose, transforming ordinary structures into tools of deception and death. The realization hit Izzy with the force of a physical blow. She had been so focused on Thorne, on the Crimson Dawn, that she had overlooked the obvious. The architect of the conspiracy was literally shaping its landscape. Vance, with his impeccable reputation and seemingly innocent profession, provided the perfect cover for Thorne's crimes, a shield of respectability that deflected suspicion. This new understanding shifted the focus of the investigation. She needed to delve into Vance's designs, to analyze his blueprints, to uncover the hidden passages, the concealed rooms, the secret pathways that Thorne had used to conceal his actions. The city itself was a labyrinth of secrets, and Vance had built the maze. The task was daunting, but Izzy felt a renewed sense of urgency. She had to understand Vance's role, not only to expose Thorne but also to dismantle the entire network of corruption. She needed to expose the architect of the conspiracy before he could further solidify Thorne's position and further obfuscate his crimes. Izzy's pursuit of Vance led her to the city archives, where she spent days poring over Vance's blueprints, studying his designs with a critical eye. She noticed subtle details, previously dismissed as mere stylistic flourishes, that now took on new significance. Strategically placed ventilation shafts, seemingly redundant structural supports, seemingly random variations in floor plans. Each detail was a clue, a piece of a much larger puzzle. As she analyzed the designs, Izzy began to see a pattern, a recurring motif that hinted at a deeper connection between Vance's architecture and Thorne's criminal activities. The pattern was geometric, a series of interconnected triangles, subtly embedded within the layouts of various buildings throughout the city. It was a secret language, a hidden code. The code, she realized, was a map. A map of Thorne's secret network, a roadmap of hidden passages, concealed escape routes, and secure locations used to facilitate his crimes. Vance hadn't just designed buildings. He had designed a labyrinthine network of secret routes that allowed Thorne to operate undetected. Deciphering the code proved to be a challenging task, requiring days of meticulous analysis and painstaking research. But as Izzy gradually unlocked the secrets of Vance's architectural language, the full extent of Thorne's network was revealed, a complex web of hidden compartments, secret passages, and concealed meeting places that stretched across the city. The map led Izzy to a previously unknown location, a hidden bunker beneath one of Vance's most iconic buildings. The bunker, equipped with state-of-the-art surveillance technology and escape routes, served as Thorne's command center, a hidden fortress where he coordinated his operations and stored incriminating evidence. This discovery was not merely a breakthrough, it was the linchpin in Izzy's case against Thorne. It provided the physical evidence, the undeniable proof that would finally expose the full extent of Thorne's crimes and bring him to justice. She now had not only the emails but the location of his secret headquarters, an undeniable link between Thorne and Vance's designs, and a roadmap to his entire criminal enterprise. The weight of the revelation was immense, but Izzy felt a surge of exhilaration. She had unraveled the conspiracy, not only exposing Thorne but also revealing the crucial role played by his seemingly innocent accomplice. She had cracked the code, mapped the maze, and found the heart of the beast. But reaching Thorne wouldn't be easy. His power was vast, his network extensive, and his security impenetrable. She knew she was walking into a viper's nest, risking her life to expose one of the city's most powerful men. Yet, the thought of bringing Thorne to justice, of dismantling his empire of deceit and violence, fueled her determination. The unveiling was imminent. The game had reached its climax. Izzy was ready. The city's carefully constructed facade of respectability was about to crumble. The fight was far from over, but she had the pieces of the puzzle, the key to the kingdom, and the means to expose the monster hiding in plain sight. The architect of the conspiracy had been exposed, and Izzy was about to bring the whole house of cards down. The rain lashed against the panoramic windows of Elias Vance's penthouse apartment, mirroring the tempest brewing inside Izzy. Vance, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit, stood silhouetted against the cityscape, a glass of amber liquid swirling in his hand. He didn't turn as she entered, the silence punctuated only by the rhythmic drumming of the rain. "You found me," Vance said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that belied the icy chill in his eyes. He finally turned, his gaze piercing, assessing. He didn't seem surprised, only amused. Perhaps a touch contemptuous. Izzy didn't bother with pleasantries. She laid the blueprints on the polished mahogany table, the geometric patterns stark against the dark wood. The triangles, Vance, they weren't just design flourishes. They were a map. He took a slow sip of his drink, his expression unreadable. An interesting observation, detective. But hardly damning. Hardly damning. Izzy scoffed, her voice tight with suppressed fury. The bunker under the Zenith Tower, Vance. Thorne's command center. Your design, your hidden passages, your escape routes. It's all there, laid out in your little geometric puzzle. A ghost of a smile played on his lips. Thorne is a meticulous man. He demands perfection, in all things. Naturally, he requires the finest architects for his ventures. He paused, letting the word hang in the air, heavy with implication. Ventures. Izzy pressed, her anger simmering. You mean murders, bombings, the systematic dismantling of anyone who dared to cross Thorne. Vance chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. Such melodrama. It's all rather theatrical, isn't it? But let's not forget, detective, I am an artist. My work speaks for itself. The lines, the angles, the precision. It's all about achieving a certain elegance. Izzy slammed her hand on the table, the blueprints shifting slightly. Elegance. You call facilitating murder elegant? You designed death traps, Vance. You created a labyrinth of deceit that allowed Thorn to operate with impunity. I designed spaces, Vance corrected, his tone unwavering. I am not responsible for how they are used. I am an artist, not a judge. An artist who used his talent to cover up a reign of terror, Izzy retorted, an artist who helped Thorn build a fortress of lies, a sanctuary for a monster. Vance leaned back, his gaze sweeping across the room, taking in the view of the glittering city below. Perhaps, he conceded, but one must admire the artistry. The sheer complexity of the network, the seamless integration of the hidden spaces. It's a masterpiece of engineering, wouldn't you agree? Izzy felt a sickening wave of nausea. His detachment, his lack of remorse, was chilling. You're a monster, Vance, she whispered, the words barely audible above the storm raging outside. A heartless monster who helped build a kingdom of blood and lies. Words, detective, he said, his voice softer now, almost melancholic. Just words. You have your evidence, your theories. But can you truly prove it? Can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my designs were anything more than architectural expression? The weight of his words hit her like a physical blow. He was right. The emails, the blueprint analysis, the discovery of the bunker, it was compelling evidence, but was it enough? Could she convince a jury, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that his seemingly innocuous designs were meticulously crafted instruments of crime? The legal ramifications were daunting. Vance stood, and walked over to the window, his back to her. The city lights twinkled, creating an almost magical backdrop to this horrifying tableau. Thorn's success, detective, was a testament to his vision, his meticulous planning. My contribution was merely aesthetic. The canvas, you might say. The breathtaking scenery against which his grand scheme played out. Think of it as high art. His laugh was brittle, devoid of warmth. Izzy saw her chance. She'd spent weeks studying his blueprints, uncovering the hidden network, deciphering the code. But there was more to it than just the geometric patterns. The subtle variations in the dimensions of certain structural elements, the strategic placement of ventilation shafts, those weren't just design choices, they were subtle indicators of weight-bearing capabilities. They were designed for specific loads. The weight of heavy equipment, the weight of secret compartments, the weight of Thorn's illicit treasures. You call it art, Vance, Izzy said, her voice steady. I call it criminal negligence. Every structural anomaly in your designs, every seemingly innocuous detail, bears witness to the weight of Thorn's crimes. Each hidden passageway, each concealed compartment, each strategically placed ventilation shaft, was designed to support not just bricks and mortar but also the weight of lies, deception, and murder. Vance turned slowly, his face betraying a flicker of surprise, then a chilling calm. Ingenious, detective, truly ingenious. But you still lack the proof. Izzy's eyes narrowed. She pulled out a small, worn device from her pocket, a specialized scanner she'd acquired discreetly. I may lack the direct proof you think I need, she said, her voice dangerously low, but I have something far more compelling. She aimed the device at the seemingly ordinary wall paneling. The device beeped, a low, insistent hum. The scanner had detected variations in density behind the paneling, evidence of a hidden compartment. Vance's composure finally cracked. A flicker of fear, barely perceptible, crossed his face. Before he could react, Izzy pressed the button on her scanner. The wall panel sprang open, revealing a small, steel-lined compartment filled with stacks of cash, incriminating documents, and a single, blood-stained architect's scale. The engraved inscription read, Elias Vance, Architect of Dreams. The rain continued to batter against the windows, but inside the penthouse apartment, the air crackled with tension. The confrontation had reached its climax, and the unveiling had just begun. The game, Izzy knew, was far from over. But she had finally cornered the architect of Thorn's reign of terror, and the intricate web of lies he had helped to construct was starting to unravel, thread by thread. The fight for justice was now a race against time, a battle to bring down a powerful and well-connected man before he could disappear, erase all traces of his criminal involvement and leave Izzy with nothing but a trail of unanswered questions. The true extent of Thorne's network, and Vance's complicity in its creation, still remained to be fully uncovered. The fight, Izzy knew, was far from over. The blood-stained architect's scale, gleaming under the penthouse apartment's harsh lighting, felt heavier than it should have. The engraved name, Elias Vance, Architect of Dreams, mocked Izzy. Dreams of murder, dreams of destruction, dreams meticulously crafted within the lines of his blueprints. The contents of the hidden compartment, the cache, the documents detailing offshore accounts and coded messages, the sheer volume of evidence, confirmed her suspicions, but it also hinted at a scale far grander, far more sinister, than she could have ever imagined. Vance, his carefully constructed facade shattered, stood silently, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and resignation. The carefully cultivated air of detached artistry had evaporated, replaced by the raw, desperate vulnerability of a man caught in the web of his own intricate design. The rain outside intensified, its rhythm a chaotic counterpoint to the stillness within the room. "It's not just about Thorne," Vance finally whispered, his voice hoarse, a stark contrast to his earlier smooth baritone. "It's bigger, much bigger." Izzy's mind raced. Thorne, the seemingly omnipotent crime lord, had been the focus of her investigation, the seemingly impenetrable fortress of the Zenith Tower his ultimate symbol of power. But Vance's words suggested a more intricate, shadowy organization pulling the strings, using Thorne as a mere pawn in a much larger game. "Bigger how?" Izzy pressed, her voice steady despite the unsettling revelation. Vance took a shaky breath, his gaze drifting to the panoramic window, the city lights blurring through the torrential rain. "The triangles, the geometric patterns in my blueprints. They weren't just a map to Thorne's command center. They were a key to something far more dangerous." He began to speak, his voice gaining strength as he revealed a meticulously planned network of underground tunnels and hidden bunkers stretching beneath the city, a subterranean labyrinth that had been in the works for decades. This wasn't simply a criminal enterprise, it was a meticulously constructed network of power, extending its tendrils into every facet of city life. He explained how he had been recruited years ago, not just for his architectural prowess but also for his ability to design structures that seamlessly integrated hidden passages and compartments. His designs weren't just buildings, they were intricate puzzles, each detail carefully calculated to conceal the city's darkest secrets. The Zenith Tower was merely the tip of the iceberg, a highly visible symbol of the vast network operating beneath the city's surface. The geometric patterns, the subtle variations in dimensions, the strategic placement of ventilation shafts, they were all part of a larger code, a roadmap to the network's true heart. The documents recovered from the hidden compartment revealed names, dates, and locations, each entry a cryptic clue hinting at a vast conspiracy reaching the highest echelons of the city's power structure. There were politicians, business tycoons, and even judges implicated, all involved in a clandestine organization that used the tunnels and bunkers not just for illegal activities but also for covert meetings, illicit transactions, and the systematic silencing of anyone who dared to uncover their secrets. The murders weren't random acts of violence but targeted eliminations, eliminating anyone who posed a threat to their power. The real motive wasn't just money or power but something far more insidious, a desperate attempt to control the city's burgeoning technological advancements. The organization was secretly developing a revolutionary technology, a sophisticated AI system capable of manipulating and controlling every aspect of city life. Thorne was merely a means to an end, a muscle hired to eliminate anyone who stood in their path. The organization, Vance revealed, believed that only they were capable of managing this technology responsibly. They saw themselves as guardians of progress, protectors of the city's future, even though their methods were undeniably brutal and morally reprehensible. The very architecture of the city had been subtly altered to accommodate the clandestine network, all under the guise of urban development and modernization projects. He had personally overseen several such projects, subtly integrating hidden passages and ventilation shafts designed for the transportation and maintenance of the organization's technological infrastructure. The weight of this revelation hit Izzy like a physical blow. The scope of the conspiracy was far greater than she'd ever imagined. This wasn't just about solving a string of murders, It was about uncovering a conspiracy that threatened the very fabric of the city, a network that operated in the shadows, manipulating everything from the flow of information to the city's most critical infrastructure systems. The ramifications were staggering. The realization sunk in. Her initial investigation, focused on Thorn, had been a mere distraction, a carefully constructed smokescreen designed to conceal the true nature of the conspiracy. The organization had been working in the open for decades, their clandestine activities disguised behind legitimate projects and carefully worded press releases. Izzy felt a chilling wave of nausea. This wasn't just a crime, it was a war, a silent, subterranean battle for control of the city, with the city itself as the battlefield. The fight had suddenly become vastly more dangerous, exponentially complex, and incredibly personal. She felt the weight of the city's destiny resting heavily on her shoulders. The seemingly innocuous geometric patterns on Vance's blueprints were, in fact, the keys to an intricate lock, and she had just received the master key. She'd found the architect, but now, she had to bring down the entire system that he had helped create, a system far larger, more powerful, and infinitely more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The game was far from over, it had just entered a whole new, terrifying level. The unveiling was complete, but the fight for justice had only just begun. The city itself held its breath, unaware of the subterranean storm brewing beneath its feet. The rain continued its relentless assault on the city, mirroring the turmoil churning within Izzy's mind. Vance's confession, while shocking, had only scratched the surface of the conspiracy. The sheer scale of it, the hidden tunnels, the clandestine organization, the revolutionary AI, was overwhelming. She needed more, a deeper understanding of the network's intricate workings, and perhaps, a crack in its seemingly impenetrable armor. Then, she noticed it. Tucked within a folder of seemingly innocuous architectural sketches, a single, unassuming photograph. It depicted a woman, her face partially obscured by shadow, but her sharp features and piercing gaze unmistakable. She wore a tailored suit, expensive jewelry glinting faintly in the dim light. The background was blurred, but Izzy recognized the distinct geometry of the Zenith Tower, a detail Vance had meticulously incorporated into his other designs. Intuition, honed by years of experience, told Izzy this woman was key. She wasn't just a peripheral figure, she was a central player, someone whose role in the conspiracy was far more significant than Vance had hinted at. The photograph was more than just a random image. It was a coded message, a carefully planted clue. "Who is she?" Izzy asked, her voice barely a whisper. Vance, exhausted but strangely alert, peered at the photograph. His eyes widened slightly, a flicker of fear crossing his usually composed features. That's Serafina Moreau," he stammered, his voice tight with an unsettling mix of apprehension and respect. She's the one who really runs things." Serafina Moreau. The name resonated with a power that overshadowed even Thorn's notorious reputation. Izzy immediately accessed her database, searching for any information on this enigmatic woman. The results were sparse, frustratingly vague. Public records revealed little. Moreau seemed to operate in a realm of almost complete anonymity, a ghost moving among the city's elite. Yet, snippets of information hinted at her immense influence. She was a philanthropist, a patron of the arts, a shadowy figure moving seamlessly between the city's high society and its darker underbelly. Vance, regaining his composure, began to elaborate. Moreau, he explained, was the mastermind, the architect of the entire conspiracy. She had recruited him years ago, not only for his architectural skills but also for his unwavering loyalty, a trait she meticulously tested before placing him in a position of trust. He had been merely a tool, a skilled craftsman meticulously building the infrastructure for her vision, unaware of the true extent of her ambition. "She's brilliant, ruthless, and utterly terrifying," Vance confessed, his gaze distant and haunted. "She sees the city as a chessboard, and we're all just pawns in her grand game." Moreau's motive, Vance revealed, wasn't simply about power or wealth, although she certainly wielded both with chilling efficiency. It ran deeper, far more sinister. Her vision was one of absolute control, not just of the city's infrastructure but also of its people. The revolutionary AI wasn't just a tool for managing resources, it was a mechanism for manipulating human behavior, subtly influencing the thoughts and actions of the city's inhabitants. Her desire to control technological progress wasn't about progress itself, but about maintaining power. The AI system was an instrument to maintain a rigid, hierarchical structure where she would remain at the apex, manipulating the city's levers of influence to ensure her unchallenged dominance. Her plan wasn't just to control the technology, it was to control the very future of the city, shaping it according to her own twisted vision. Izzy felt a chill crawl down her spine. The conspiracy wasn't just about illegal activities or financial gain, it was a chilling attempt to establish a totalitarian regime, cloaked under the guise of technological advancement and civic progress. Moreau's ambition transcended mere criminality, it was a disturbing, almost apocalyptic vision of absolute control. The investigation, previously focused on Thorne, now shifted to Moreau. She was the ultimate prize, the linchpin of the entire operation. But unlike Thorne, who operated openly, Moreau was a phantom, her presence felt more than seen. Tracking her would require a far more subtle approach, a strategic dismantling of her network from within. Vance, now a reluctant ally, provided crucial information, hidden access points, coded messages, and intricate details about Moreau's habits and routines. He described her meticulous planning, her unwavering focus, and the almost supernatural ability she possessed to predict and counter any potential threat. She wasn't merely cunning, she was a visionary strategist, anticipating every move before it was made. The realization hit Izzy, this wasn't simply a cat-and-mouse game anymore. It was a war of wits against a formidable opponent, a battle for the soul of the city. Moreau represented a threat far more significant than Thorne ever could have been. She was the unseen hand guiding the city's destiny, pulling the strings from the shadows, and Izzy was the only one who could stop her. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Izzy, working with a skeleton crew to avoid alerting Moreau, painstakingly analyzed Vance's information, piecing together fragments of the puzzle. She discovered that Moreau had multiple identities, aliases carefully constructed to obscure her true self. Her financial dealings were intricate, interwoven with a network of shell corporations and offshore accounts, designed to conceal her wealth and influence. Her connections extended into the city's political landscape, allowing her to manipulate legislation and control public opinion. Through coded messages recovered from Vance's apartment, Izzy discovered a series of clandestine meetings Moreau was attending, all held at different locations throughout the city, each chosen for its strategic importance and security. They weren't random gatherings, they were carefully orchestrated events where key members of the organization strategized, coordinated their activities and ensured absolute secrecy. The locations themselves were a puzzle, each carefully chosen to represent a different facet of the city's infrastructure. Izzy had to move quickly. The stakes were too high. Moreau wasn't merely a criminal mastermind, she was a threat to the very fabric of the city, a danger to its future. She had infiltrated every level of society, from the city council to the police department. Stopping her wouldn't be easy, it would require a calculated risk, a daring move that would simultaneously expose her and cripple her network. The hunt was on. Izzy, armed with the knowledge Vance had provided, felt a surge of determination. The unveiling of the conspiracy had led her to a new suspect, one far more dangerous and far more elusive than anything she had ever encountered. The game had shifted, the stakes raised exponentially, and Izzy, alone against an adversary of immense power and cunning, knew that only one thing could determine the outcome, her unwavering resolve and her brilliant strategic thinking. The fight for the city's future had only just begun, and she was ready. The city's fate, it seemed, rested on the shoulders of a single woman, ready to take on the ultimate challenge, confronting the shadowy figure that was Serafina Moreau. Chapter 5. The Chase. The rain, a relentless percussionist, hammered against the grimy windows of Izzy's makeshift command center, a repurposed storage unit tucked away in the city's forgotten corners. Each drop echoed the frantic beat of her heart as she scrutinized the latest intel, a cryptic string of coordinates leading to Moreau's next clandestine meeting. Vance's information, delivered in hushed whispers and frantic scribbles, was proving invaluable, but Moreau remained a phantom, a whisper in the wind. Izzy didn't have time for meticulous planning. Moreau's network was a hydra, its heads multiplying with every passing hour. She needed to strike quickly, decisively, before Moreau could anticipate her move. She glanced at the grainy security footage, a fleeting glimpse of a black sedan, its license plate obscured, speeding through the city's labyrinthine streets. The car, Vance had revealed, was Moreau's preferred mode of transport, a ghost in the urban sprawl. Ignoring the nagging feeling of being watched, she slipped into her customized motorbike, a sleek machine built for speed and agility. The city was her battlefield, the relentless rain her ally, masking the sounds of her pursuit. Her target, an abandoned warehouse district on the city's outskirts, the location of Moreau's next meeting. This was a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, where every corner held a potential ambush, every shadow a lurking threat. The speedometer needle quivered, pushing the limits of the machine and Izzy's nerve. The city blurred into a tapestry of streaks and shadows, the relentless rain transforming the streets into a treacherous obstacle course. She navigated the urban canyons, weaving through the city's pulse of speeding taxis and roaring trucks, her senses heightened, her focus unwavering. She cut through back alleys, the bike's tires spitting gravel and water. The aroma of damp earth and exhaust fumes filled her nostrils, a heady mix of danger and adrenaline. Every turn felt like a roll of the dice, a gamble against time and Moreau's anticipated countermoves. The pursuit wasn't just about speed, it was a chess match, each maneuver calculated, each risk weighed against the potential reward. As she approached the warehouse district, the city's frenetic energy seemed to dissipate, replaced by a palpable sense of unease. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and forgotten dreams. She spotted the black sedan, parked discreetly in a shadowed alley, its sleek lines blending seamlessly with the surrounding darkness. Her heart pounded in her chest like a war drum as she carefully approached the warehouse, the bike's engine hushed to a low growl. She dismounted, the cold rain immediately soaking her clothes. The warehouse, a decaying monolith of brick and steel, seemed to leer at her from the gloom. She could feel the weight of the city's secrets pressing down upon her, the collective whispers of those who had been caught in Moreau's web. The warehouse door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior, the air thick with hushed conversations and the smell of stale cigarettes. Izzy moved with the silent grace of a predator, her every step calculated, her senses attuned to the slightest sound. She slipped inside, the shadows becoming her allies, concealing her presence, allowing her to move unseen. The warehouse was a cavernous space, filled with the debris of a forgotten industry. Stacks of rusted machinery, broken pallets, and discarded tools lay scattered across the concrete floor. The air hung heavy with the ghosts of past workers, their silent struggles mirroring her own desperate pursuit. She spotted them, a group of men, impeccably dressed in dark suits, huddled around a large table. At the head of the table sat Serafina Moreau. She was even more striking in person, a vision of chilling beauty, her sharp features framed by sleek, dark hair. Her eyes, intense and calculating, scanned the room, assessing the situation with an unnerving precision. Izzy knew she couldn't risk a direct confrontation. She needed a strategic approach, a way to infiltrate the meeting and gather more intelligence without blowing her cover. She moved silently, using the shadows and debris as cover, inching closer to the group. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for a weakness, a vulnerability, a point of entry. She noticed a side door, partially obscured by a stack of crates. It seemed unguarded, offering a potential escape route or a hidden vantage point. Izzy carefully maneuvered towards it, her heart pounding a rhythm of anticipation and dread. She reached the door, her hand hovering over the handle. This was her chance, a delicate balance between boldness and caution. One wrong move could expose her, turning the tables on the hunt. As her fingers brushed the cold metal of the handle, a sudden commotion erupted from the main room. One of the men spotted her, a flash of movement, a sharp intake of breath. Izzy knew she had to act fast. She threw open the door, slipping into the darkness beyond, her heart hammering against her ribs. She found herself in a narrow passageway, leading to a labyrinthine network of tunnels and corridors, a subterranean world hidden beneath the city's bustling streets. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and stagnant water. She had stumbled upon one of Moreau's secret escape routes, a labyrinthine network designed to protect her from any potential threat. The pursuit had taken a sharp turn, shifting from a street chase to a subterranean game of hide-and-seek. The tunnels were dark and claustrophobic, the air heavy with the scent of dust and decay. Every step echoed through the silence, amplifying the feeling of isolation and unease. She navigated the maze-like passages, her senses heightened, her every step calculated. She could hear the distant sounds of footsteps pursuing her, their heavy treads echoing through the tunnels. The chase had entered a new phase, a high-stakes game of subterfuge and survival. She pressed on, deeper into the city's underbelly, the echoes of her pursuers getting closer. She reached a fork in the tunnel, two paths leading to unknown destinations. She had to choose, a risky gamble in a subterranean maze. She chose the path less traveled, a daring decision guided by intuition. She could hear the sounds of the pursuit drawing closer. She knew she needed to escape, and fast. The tunnels led her to an unexpected opening, an abandoned subway station, long since decommissioned and forgotten by the city above. The air was thick with the smell of rust and decay, the tracks coated in a thick layer of grime and dust. She emerged onto a platform, the vast emptiness amplifying the sense of isolation. The pursuit had shifted again, from dark tunnels to an eerie abandoned subway station. As she searched for a way out, she heard the distant rumble of an approaching train. Moreau's pursuers were closing in, their presence a looming threat in the echoing silence of the abandoned station. It was a battle against time, a high-stakes game where the wrong move could lead to deadly consequences. The rumble of the train grew louder, shaking the very foundations of the abandoned station. She had to make a choice, a high-stakes gamble in a subterranean maze. The situation had reached a critical point in the dangerous game of cat and mouse. The abandoned subway station was her last stand, a critical juncture in the chase. The suspense built, intensifying the thrill of the pursuit as she was about to face her most dangerous adversary in a high-stakes game of survival. The city's fate, it seemed, rested on her shoulders. Her heart pounded a rhythm of survival as she braced herself for the confrontation that would determine the fate of the city. The rumble of the approaching train was deafening, shaking the very foundations of the abandoned station. Izzy, adrenaline coursing through her veins, scanned the desolate platform. Escape seemed impossible. Then, a flicker of movement in the shadows caught her eye. A figure emerged from the darkness, silhouetted against the faint light filtering from the tunnel's mouth. It was Silas, a former suspect, a shadowy figure who had previously evaded her grasp, a man she had initially pegged as one of Moreau's lieutenants. Silas, his face obscured by the shadows, held up a hand, a gesture that suggested a truce, a temporary alliance born out of mutual desperation. He was as surprised to see her as she was him, his eyes widening slightly as recognition dawned. The situation was absurd, a fugitive and a detective, united against a common enemy. Moreau, Silas rasped, his voice barely a whisper, lost in the cavernous space of the abandoned station. She's using this place as a transit point. Izzy's mind raced. Silas's information, if true, could be a game changer. His unexpected appearance in this desolate place, his words, hinted at a possible shift in the dynamics of the investigation. Could he be genuinely helping, or was this a cunning ruse, a more insidious trap? She couldn't afford to take chances. "What do you know?" she demanded, her voice tight with suspicion. Silas took a hesitant step closer, his eyes scanning the platform, his body tense with apprehension. "Moreau is moving her operation. This station, it's a hidden route to the docks. She's planning something big." The unexpected alliance was a risky gamble. Trusting Silas felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm of doubt, but the alternative, confronting Moreau alone in this forsaken place, felt even more perilous. She needed information, and Silas, despite his questionable past, seemed to possess the key. "What kind of something big?" Izzy pressed, her skepticism barely masked. Silas hesitated, a shadow of fear flickering across his face. I don't know the specifics, but it involves a shipment. A large shipment, something dangerous. He swallowed hard, the tension in his voice palpable. I overheard fragments of conversations, coded messages. Enough to understand the seriousness of it all. The approaching train was now just moments away, its relentless rumble a constant reminder of the impending danger. Izzy had to act swiftly. "Show me," she said, her voice firm, cutting through the echoing silence of the station. "Show me where she's going." Silas, seemingly resigned to his fate, led her through a maze of crumbling infrastructure, hidden passages, and forgotten tunnels, bypassing the main platforms. He moved with an unnerving familiarity, a ghostly presence navigating the station's labyrinthine depths. He spoke little, his words carefully chosen, betraying a carefulness that spoke volumes about the perilous life he led. They reached a section of the station hidden behind a decaying wall, a secret passage only accessible to those who knew its location. Silas produced a rusty key, its teeth worn smooth by time and use, and unlocked a heavy metal door, revealing a narrow tunnel leading deeper into the bowels of the city. The tunnel was dark, damp, and claustrophobic. The air hung heavy with the smell of mildew and decay, the silence broken only by the rhythmic drip of water. The further they went, the more Izzy felt the sense of foreboding tightening its grip. This was Moreau's secret passage, a subterranean escape route leading to her unknown destination. This unexpected alliance, while risky, offered Izzy a chance to penetrate Moreau's innermost circle. As they navigated the tunnels, Silas revealed bits of information, piecing together the fragmented clues he had gathered. He spoke of Moreau's network, a complex web of informants, smugglers, and corrupt officials. He explained her methods, her ruthlessness, and her uncanny ability to stay one step ahead of the authorities. His information was a mosaic of shadows and half-truths, yet each piece, however small, contributed to a clearer picture of Moreau's grand design. They finally emerged into a cavernous space, a forgotten section of the subway system used for storage. Here, amidst piles of discarded materials and forgotten equipment, they found it, a concealed loading dock, a gateway to the city's bustling harbor. Trucks were positioned ready for loading. Men in dark suits, Moreau's accomplices, were meticulously preparing for the shipment's departure. Izzy knew this was it, the culmination of weeks of relentless pursuit. The stakes were higher than ever. This wasn't just a simple drug bust, it was something far more sinister, something that could have devastating consequences for the entire city. The scale of the operation stunned her, highlighting the enormity of Moreau's criminal empire. Silas, surprisingly calm considering the circumstances, pointed towards a group of men huddled near a large container. "They're loading it now," he whispered. "That's where it's all happening." Izzy knew a direct confrontation would be suicide. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely exposed. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. The unexpected alliance, fraught with risks, had led them to the heart of the operation, but the most perilous part of the game was yet to begin. The rumble of a distant engine broke the tense silence. It was Moreau's preferred mode of transport, the black sedan. It was arriving, bringing the head of the operation to oversee the final stages of the shipment's departure. This was their chance, their only chance, to take down Moreau and dismantle her network. The situation was precarious. Trusting Silas was still a gamble, but their shared desperation had forged an unlikely bond, a fragile alliance born amidst the decay and shadows of an abandoned subway station. This alliance, however temporary, was their only hope of unraveling Moreau's intricate web of deceit and bringing her to justice. The city's fate hung precariously in the balance, a delicate dance between betrayal and trust, where every decision was a gamble, every step a calculated risk. The air crackled with a palpable tension as they waited for Moreau's arrival, bracing themselves for the final confrontation that would determine their fate and the fate of the city. The next few moments would determine everything. The suspense was almost unbearable. The chase had reached its climax, a heart-stopping finale in the forgotten depths of the city. The black sedan, a sleek obsidian predator, slid silently into the loading dock, its headlights cutting through the gloom like predatory eyes. Moreau emerged, her silhouette framed by the harsh glare, a vision of icy composure even amidst the frantic activity. She wore a tailored black suit, impeccably pressed, a stark contrast to the grime and decay surrounding her. Her face, usually obscured by a veil of calculated neutrality, was etched with a grim determination. Izzy felt a shiver run down her spine. This wasn't the ruthless businesswoman she'd encountered in her initial investigations. This was Moreau at her most dangerous. Silas, surprisingly unfazed by Moreau's arrival, gave Izzy a barely perceptible nod. He subtly pointed towards a group of men moving heavy crates onto the waiting trucks. Izzy focused on them, her attention honed on the container they were loading. She noticed a strange symbol etched into its side, a stylized serpent coiled around a skull. The symbol resonated with a chilling familiarity, a detail that had been buried deep within her subconscious. It was the same symbol she'd seen tattooed on the victim's wrist during her initial investigation. The connection sent a jolt of recognition through her, a realization that cut through the fog of uncertainty. As Moreau barked orders, her voice cutting through the chaotic scene like a whip, Izzy noticed subtle details. The men handling the containers moved with a nervous energy, their eyes darting constantly, their glances betraying a deeper unease. This wasn't just a simple shipment of contraband, there was something far more sinister at play. Suddenly, a harsh scream pierced the air, shattering the controlled chaos. One of Moreau's men, his face contorted in agony, clutched his throat, collapsing onto the grimy concrete floor. Panic rippled through the group, throwing their meticulously crafted facade into disarray. Moreau, her composure momentarily shattered, reacted with a swift and ruthless efficiency that sent chills down Izzy's spine. She barked out another order, a frantic command that sent her men scrambling to regain control. Izzy seized the moment. This unexpected interruption was a crack in Moreau's carefully constructed fortress, a chink in her armor that Izzy couldn't afford to ignore. She signaled to Silas, who responded with a grim determination that reflected her own resolve. The time for shadows and half measures was over. It was time for a direct confrontation. They moved swiftly, using the ensuing chaos as a cover, weaving through the frantic activity like phantoms. Izzy, guided by Silas's intimate knowledge of the dock, moved with a deadly grace, navigating the maze of crates and containers. They reached the container bearing the serpent and skull symbol. As they neared, Izzy could hear muffled sounds emanating from within, a low moan punctuated by the rhythmic thump of a dull, heavy object. With a shared glance, Izzy and Silas managed to wedge open a small panel on the side of the container, revealing a horrifying sight. Inside, tightly bound and gagged, lay several victims. They were alive, but barely, their bodies bruised and battered, their faces pallid with fear. But something else stood out. Something far more disturbing than their physical condition. Each of the victims bore the same tattoo, the serpent and skull symbol. Izzy felt a cold dread wash over her. The victims weren't random targets. They were linked to something far more personal, more deeply rooted than simple criminal activity. Moreau wasn't just a drug lord or arms trafficker. She was orchestrating something far more sinister, a carefully planned act of vengeance. Silas, his face grim, whispered, "They're not just victims, they're witnesses. Witnesses to something Moreau wants buried forever." The realization struck Izzy like a physical blow. This wasn't about money or power. It was about a personal vendetta, a carefully orchestrated plan to silence those who had witnessed a dark chapter in Moreau's past. The symbol, the victims, the entire operation, it all pointed to a past she'd yet to uncover, a hidden motive that explained Moreau's ruthlessness. Izzy's mind raced, piecing together the scattered fragments of information. She remembered a detail from a previous case, an unsolved murder, a brutal crime committed years ago, a case that had been inexplicably closed without a proper investigation. The victim had been a prominent businessman, a man who had allegedly crossed paths with Moreau. The businessman's business dealings, shrouded in secrecy, had always pointed towards illegal operations. However, the key details had always been missing. Could the victims be connected to this man's death? As the police sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of backup, Izzy realized this wasn't just a drug bust. This was a massacre in the making, the culmination of a decades-long grudge. This wasn't about greed or power, This was about revenge. Moreau, alerted to the commotion around the container, emerged from the shadows with a pistol in her hand. Her eyes, cold and devoid of emotion, met Izzy's. But there was a flicker of something else in her gaze, a hint of vulnerability, of fear, hidden beneath the icy surface. It was a fleeting moment, barely perceptible, but it was enough to confirm Izzy's suspicions. This wasn't simply a calculated crime, it was a deeply personal act of revenge, fueled by years of pent-up rage and carefully cultivated resentment. The ensuing confrontation was a blur of adrenaline and chaos. The air crackled with the tension as guns blazed, the echoes of gunfire bouncing off the metal walls of the loading dock. Silas, acting as a diversion, created a smokescreen allowing Izzy to approach Moreau undetected. It was a desperate gamble, a fight for survival against a formidable opponent. With a final, decisive move, Izzy subdued Moreau, her years of training kicking in. Moreau, her composure finally shattered, looked at Izzy not with anger or defiance, but with a chilling mix of resignation and profound sadness. The weight of her actions, her decades-long vendetta, seemed to crush her in that single moment of defeat. As the police swarmed the scene, securing the victims and apprehending the remaining accomplices, Izzy stood over Moreau, her heart pounding. Moreau's confession, a chilling tale of betrayal and long-simmering resentment, exposed the truth behind the killings. It wasn't about power, it was about a life irrevocably altered, a personal vendetta played out on a city-wide scale. The serpent and skull symbol, finally deciphered, pointed to a secret society, a clandestine network, involved in shady deals and even darker deeds, a network Moreau had sought to destroy for personal reasons. The chase was over, but the revelation was far more disturbing than Izzy could have ever imagined. The city was safe, but the truth behind Moreau's actions exposed a deeper, darker truth about the city's underbelly, a web of corruption and deceit, a clandestine network operating in plain sight. The case was closed, but the ramifications were far-reaching, and Izzy knew her work was far from over. The unmasking of Moreau's motives had only scratched the surface of a much larger, more sinister conspiracy. The city had been saved, but the fight had just begun. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid bite of gunpowder. Moreau, her face a mask of chilling composure that belied the tremor in her hand, stood poised, her pistol trained on Izzy. The loading dock, once a scene of controlled chaos, was now a battlefield, littered with shattered crates, discarded weapons, and the groaning forms of Moreau's incapacitated men. The wail of approaching sirens provided a frantic counterpoint to the silence that preceded the final confrontation. Izzy, her breath ragged, her muscles screaming in protest, returned Moreau's gaze. She hadn't anticipated such fierce resistance. Moreau was more than a ruthless businesswoman, she was a predator, honed by years of experience and fueled by a rage that burned with an almost supernatural intensity. Izzy's hand rested on the holster at her hip, her own weapon ready, but she knew that a direct confrontation would be suicidal. Moreau was faster, more experienced, and clearly had a death wish. Izzy's mind raced, searching for an opening, a vulnerability in Moreau's meticulously constructed defense. She noticed the subtle shift in Moreau's stance, the almost imperceptible tightening of her jaw, the way her eyes darted nervously towards the approaching police sirens. It was a flicker of fear, a chink in the armor of her icy composure, a fleeting moment of weakness Izzy couldn't afford to miss. "It's over, Moreau," Izzy said, her voice steady, despite the hammering of her heart. She spoke calmly, despite feeling anything but calm, her voice cutting through the night air, a calm that stood in stark contrast to the chaos around them. "Surrender peacefully, and you might still have a chance." Moreau let out a short, harsh laugh, a sound devoid of humor. "You think you can stop me? You think you can undo everything I've done?" Her voice was laced with a bitterness that chilled Izzy to the bone. "After all this time, after all the sacrifices, you're naive." The tension in the air was palpable, a living thing that could be felt pressing down on them both. The silence stretched, broken only by the insistent wail of approaching sirens and the heavy breaths of the two women locked in a deadly standoff. Izzy knew she had to act fast. The police were closing in, and Moreau wasn't going to give up easily. Izzy feigned a stumble, her body swaying slightly, as if losing her balance. Moreau's eyes flickered, her attention diverted for a fraction of a second. It was the opening Izzy needed. With a speed that belied her apparent weakness, she launched herself forward, tackling Moreau to the ground. The ensuing struggle was brutal, a desperate ballet of fists and feet, a whirlwind of movement in the grimy confines of the loading dock. Moreau fought back with the ferocious strength of a cornered animal, her movements sharp and precise, her years of experience evident in every strike. Izzy, however, was relentless, her training pushing her beyond the limits of exhaustion. She absorbed Moreau's blows, using her superior strength and agility to evade the deadliest attacks. It was a fierce, desperate struggle, a struggle for dominance played out under the looming shadow of the police sirens. The fight raged for what felt like an eternity, a vicious back-and-forth battle that left both women gasping for breath, their bodies bruised and battered. Moreau managed to land a few powerful strikes, but Izzy, fueled by adrenaline and determination, managed to take the worst of the blows. She had to find a way to gain the upper hand. As the sirens drew closer, Izzy saw her chance. She used a powerful kick to disarm Moreau, sending her pistol skidding across the concrete floor. The loss of her weapon seemed to deflate Moreau, momentarily breaking her spirit. Izzy seized the opportunity, pinning Moreau to the ground, her weight pressing down on her opponent. Moreau, her breath coming in ragged gasps, looked up at Izzy, her eyes filled with a chilling mixture of defeat and something else, something that made Izzy pause. It was a flicker of sorrow, a profound sadness that belied the ruthlessness she had displayed only moments before. It was as though the years of anger and vengeance had finally caught up to her, leaving her stripped bare, exposed, and utterly defeated. It wasn't about the money, Moreau gasped, her voice barely a whisper. It was never about power. Her confession came in ragged bursts, interspersed with coughs and gasps. It was about revenge, for what they did to my family. She spoke of a conspiracy that ran deep, involving powerful individuals and shady dealings. Her family had been destroyed, she said, by a group who were protected by their wealth and influence. The deaths were part of a plan to unveil the truth, to expose the corruption that had stolen everything from her. As the police lights flooded the area, illuminating the grim scene, Izzy felt a strange mix of triumph and sadness. She had won the physical battle, but the emotional cost was heavy. Moreau, her fierce spirit finally broken, had become just another victim in a story that was far bigger than either of them. The truth Moreau revealed was a Pandora's box, opening up a world of corruption, deceit, and hidden agendas. The arrest of Moreau was just the beginning. The investigation that followed was even more intense, unearthing a network of corruption that stretched into the highest echelons of the city's power structure. The serpent and skull symbol, a recurring motif throughout the case, led investigators to a secret society operating in the shadows, involved in illicit activities, money laundering, and even murder. It was a conspiracy so vast, so deeply rooted, that its tentacles stretched far beyond the initial investigation. Izzy, having witnessed the depths of human depravity and the consequences of unchecked vengeance, knew her work was far from over. She had stopped Moreau, but the city was riddled with similar threats. The final confrontation had been nothing more than a skirmish in a much larger war, a battle in a larger conflict, the fight against corruption and injustice that seemed to be embedded in the city's soul. The city was safe for now, but the fight was far from over. The seeds of corruption had been planted long ago, and the harvest was far from over. The chase was over, but a new chapter had begun. One where the battle lines were unclear and the stakes were even higher. The handcuffs clicked shut, the metallic sound echoing in the sudden silence that followed the chaotic struggle. Moreau, her face streaked with grime and blood, offered no resistance. The fierce fire in her eyes had been extinguished, replaced by a hollow emptiness that mirrored the devastation she had wrought and the destruction she had faced. The sirens, their wail now a distant echo, faded into the background, replaced by the rhythmic thump of a police helicopter overhead. Officer Ramirez, a seasoned detective with a weary gaze, approached Izzy, his expression a mixture of relief and grim fascination. "You all right, Diaz?" he asked, his voice low, his words a testament to the unspoken understanding between them. a bond forged in the crucible of countless investigations. Izzy nodded, her own body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached, every breath a labored effort. The adrenaline that had propelled her through the brutal fight had receded, leaving her with a profound exhaustion that settled deep in her bones. Just a little bruised, she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Moreau's a tough one. Ramirez grunted, his gaze sweeping over the scene. The loading dock was a disaster area, a testament to the violence that had unfolded just minutes before. The air still reeked of gunpowder and blood. The fallen crates lay scattered like fallen dominoes, their contents spilled across the concrete floor. The forms of Moreau's men, subdued and groaning, were slowly being attended to by paramedics. "We'll get her to the precinct. Forensics will have a field day with this," Ramirez said, gesturing towards the scene with a weary sweep of his hand. "And we'll need to debrief you properly. This goes beyond a simple drug bust." The truth Moreau had revealed, a conspiracy involving powerful figures, a secret society, and a revenge plot stretching back decades, had cast a long shadow over the case. It wasn't just about drugs and money anymore. It was about corruption, power, and the lengths people would go to for vengeance. It was a story that went far beyond the confines of the loading dock, far beyond the immediate grasp of the law. As Moreau was led away, her gaze caught Izzy's. There was no hatred in her eyes, only a profound weariness, a tragic acceptance of her fate. It was a look that lingered long after Moreau had disappeared into the waiting police car, a silent acknowledgement of a shared understanding, a silent testament to the bitter truth that had unfolded. The following days were a blur of interrogations, depositions, and endless paperwork. Izzy found herself thrust into the center of a maelstrom of investigations, a whirlwind of meetings with high-ranking officials, forensic experts, and the city's most experienced investigators. The investigation broadened, its tentacles reaching into the city's darkest corners, unearthing a complex web of deceit and corruption that was far more extensive than anyone had initially suspected. The serpent and skull symbol, a chilling emblem associated with Moreau's organization, became the key that unlocked numerous hidden doors, leading investigators to a shadowy network of individuals and organizations involved in money laundering, arms trafficking, and political manipulation. The conspiracy extended beyond Moreau herself, reaching into the city's power structures, implicating high-profile politicians, wealthy businessmen, and even members of the city's elite. Izzy's meticulous attention to detail, her keen observational skills, and her unrelenting determination proved invaluable. She pieced together fragmented clues, connected disparate facts, and helped uncover the intricate web of relationships that connected the various players in the conspiracy. Her knowledge of the city's underbelly, combined with her unwavering commitment to justice, helped to unravel the truth, revealing the extent of the corruption that plagued the city. The media frenzy that followed was intense. The revelations shocked the city, sending ripples of disbelief and outrage throughout the population. The city's reputation was tarnished, its image shattered. The once untouchable elite found themselves under scrutiny, their carefully constructed facades crumbling under the weight of the truth. The trials that followed were protracted and arduous. The defense lawyers were relentless, using every legal tactic available to delay justice, to obfuscate the truth, and to protect their clients. But the evidence was overwhelming, the testimony irrefutable. One by one, the members of the conspiracy were brought to justice, their carefully constructed world of privilege and power crashing down around them. Even after the last trial concluded, the long shadow of the conspiracy remained. The city was left reeling, its citizens grappling with the revelation of the depth of the corruption that had festered within their midst. The sense of betrayal was palpable, the feeling of uncertainty pervasive. The trust in institutions and authority had been severely eroded. Izzy, exhausted but resolute, watched from the sidelines as the city began to rebuild, to heal. She had played a crucial role in exposing the conspiracy, in bringing the perpetrators to justice. But she knew the fight was far from over. The seeds of corruption, planted deep in the city's soil, could sprout again at any time. The victory felt hollow, a temporary respite in a long and ongoing battle. Moreau's confession, the details she had revealed in her desperate plea, had haunted Izzy long after her arrest. Moreau's actions, while undoubtedly criminal, had stemmed from a place of deep-seated pain and a desire for retribution. It was a complex and disturbing truth that added another layer to the intricate tapestry of the case. The initial sense of justice served was overshadowed by the recognition that the true victims were far more numerous than just those involved in the direct conflict. The investigation's aftermath prompted major reforms within the city's law enforcement and political systems. New regulations were introduced, designed to prevent future conspiracies and to promote transparency and accountability. It was a slow and arduous process, a long road toward healing, but it was a start. Izzy, however, knew she couldn't rest on her laurels. The city was safer, more transparent, but the struggle for justice was ongoing. The lessons learned from the case, the exposure of such deeply entrenched corruption, highlighted the vulnerabilities inherent in any system. The fight against injustice was a marathon, not a sprint. She had won a battle, but the war was far from over, and she knew that the next battle could arrive at any moment. The chase may have ended, but the hunt for truth and justice, she knew, would continue. The city's wounds were healing, but the scars remained, a permanent reminder of the darkness that had been uncovered and the fight to keep that darkness at bay. Chapter 6. Aftermath. The city, once vibrant and bustling, now wore a cloak of subdued anxiety. The celebratory headlines proclaiming the dismantling of Moreau's network had faded, replaced by a lingering unease. The whispers of the conspiracy, once confined to hushed tones in smoky backrooms, now echoed in boardrooms and living rooms. The trial's conclusion hadn't brought the expected sense of closure. Instead, it had left a gaping wound, exposing the city's vulnerabilities and the fragility of its foundations. For Izzy, the aftermath wasn't a triumphant victory parade but a quiet reckoning. The adrenaline rush was gone, replaced by a bone-deep fatigue that seeped into her dreams. She saw Moreau's face in the flickering shadows, heard the chilling echo of her confession in the silence of her apartment. Moreau's story, a tapestry woven from betrayal, revenge, and the insidious corruption of power, haunted her. It wasn't just about bringing down a criminal organization, it was about confronting the moral ambiguities that lay at the heart of the city's soul. The lines between justice and vengeance had blurred, leaving Izzy questioning the true nature of her own victory. The physical scars were healing, but the emotional wounds lingered. The constant tension, the relentless pressure of the investigation, had taken their toll. Sleep was a battlefield, where fragmented memories of the chaotic struggle on the loading dock clashed with the stark reality of the aftermath. She found herself replaying the moments leading to Moreau's capture, dissecting every detail, searching for clues she might have missed, seeking some form of closure that seemed perpetually out of reach. Ramirez, her partner and confidant, recognized the toll the investigation had taken. He saw the shadows in her eyes, the subtle tremor in her hands. He understood the weight of her burden, the silent battle she fought against the lingering ghosts of the past. He often found her staring out the window of her apartment, gazing at the cityscape, a blend of awe and weariness mirrored in her expression. Their bond, forged in the crucible of the investigation, had deepened. He understood the weight of responsibility that she carried, far beyond the confines of her job. He made sure to check on her regularly, not with forced cheer, but with a quiet understanding of her need for support. Their conversations moved beyond the confines of the case. They spoke about the city, about its inherent resilience and its susceptibility to corruption. He shared his concerns about the lasting impact of the conspiracy, the slow healing process and the lingering sense of distrust. Izzy confided her doubts, her fears, her struggles to reconcile the justice served with the lingering sense of unease that gnawed at her. He listened patiently, his silence a testament to the trust and understanding that had grown between them. The media storm, though initially focused on the thrilling exposé of the conspiracy, gradually shifted. The public's initial outrage gave way to a more critical examination of the city's systems. The investigations into the complicity of high-ranking officials and wealthy businessmen became the new focus, sparking heated debates about ethics, accountability, and the fragility of democracy. Izzy found herself becoming a reluctant symbol of this new scrutiny. Her image, once largely unknown, now appeared in news articles and talk shows. She became an unexpected figurehead for a generation disillusioned with the established structures. This new level of public attention was not something Izzy sought, and in many ways, it felt like an invasion of her privacy. Yet, she also recognized the importance of her position. She found that she could use her newfound voice to advocate for reform and transparency. She began to speak at public forums and to participate in policy discussions, sharing her insights and experiences in a way that proved to be impactful. She realized that her role wasn't just to solve crimes, it was also to fight for a system that was less vulnerable to corruption and abuse of power. The city's response to the fallout was a slow and arduous process. The investigations into the various institutions that had been implicated were extensive and detailed. New laws were introduced to increase transparency and accountability. The political landscape shifted, with some politicians resigning or facing charges, their careers ruined by the revelations of the conspiracy. But the process of healing was far from complete. The deep-seated corruption wasn't something that could be erased overnight. It was a process of dismantling a system, rebuilding its foundations, and instilling a new culture of integrity. Izzy, however, couldn't simply disappear back into anonymity. The experiences she had endured had fundamentally changed her perspective. The fight for justice had become more than a career, it was a personal crusade. She continued her work, but with a renewed focus on preventative measures, recognizing that the best way to combat corruption was to ensure that it couldn't take root in the first place. The city's wounds healed slowly, leaving behind scars that served as a grim reminder of its past. The lingering sense of betrayal lingered, a constant reminder of the fragility of trust. Yet, amid the despair and disillusionment, there was a glimmer of hope. The city began to rebuild, not just its physical structures but also its moral compass. A sense of collective responsibility emerged, a shared desire to prevent such an event from happening again. This was the true aftermath of the conspiracy, a long and arduous process of healing, transformation, and the relentless pursuit of a more just and transparent future. The hunt may have ended, but the work for justice was far from over. Izzy, now a symbol of this ongoing pursuit, continued her vigilant watch, ensuring that the darkness would not again engulf the city. The final gavel fell, silencing the courtroom, but not the city. The conviction of Moreau, the dismantling of his organization, it felt like a Pyrrhic victory. A hollow echo resonated in the celebratory headlines, a dissonance that mirrored the uneasy quiet that had settled over the city. The trial had exposed a festering wound, a cancer of corruption that ran deeper than anyone had imagined. The cheers had faded, replaced by a persistent murmur of unanswered questions, a low hum of suspicion that vibrated through the city's veins. Izzy felt it most acutely. The exhaustion wasn't just physical, it was a weariness of the soul, a fatigue born from the relentless pressure of the investigation and the moral ambiguities she'd wrestled with. The victory felt incomplete, tainted by the lingering sense of things left unsaid, things left undone. Moreau's confession, though damning, had been carefully constructed, a narrative designed to protect certain individuals, to shield others from the full weight of the law. She'd felt it, a subtle manipulation, a carefully crafted narrative designed to leave the impression of a complete revelation while simultaneously hiding crucial information. Ramirez, ever the pragmatist, had tried to reassure her. "We got the big fish, Izzy," he'd said, his voice a low rumble meant to comfort, but his eyes held a similar uncertainty. "That's more than most ever achieve." But Izzy couldn't shake the feeling of incompleteness. The sheer scale of the conspiracy, the intricate web of connections, hinted at a larger, more sinister power at play, a puppeteer pulling strings from the shadows, remaining unseen, untouched by the law. One such unanswered question revolved around the mysterious benefactor, a shadowy figure who had funded Moreau's operations for years. The money trail had gone cold, leading to dead ends and encrypted accounts, meticulously concealed behind layers of shell corporations and offshore havens. The investigation had yielded several promising leads, but each time they'd seemed to be one step behind, constantly uncovering more intricate layers of deception. The benefactor's identity remained a phantom, an enigma that taunted them with its elusive nature. It was a ghost in the machine, a reminder that the conspiracy ran deeper than initially perceived. Another unsettling detail was the inexplicable disappearance of several key witnesses just before their scheduled testimonies. They vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a trail of cryptic messages and unanswered calls. Izzy suspected foul play, but the evidence was circumstantial, offering little more than speculation and unanswered questions. The police investigations had been thorough, yet they had yielded nothing. Were these witnesses silenced to protect the higher-ups implicated in Moreau's network? Or was something far more sinister at play? The unanswered questions gnawed at her, leaving her with a profound sense of unease. The media, initially enthralled by the drama of the takedown, had shifted its focus. The public's outrage gradually morphed into a critical examination of the system itself. The city's institutions, once pillars of strength, were now viewed with suspicion, their integrity called into question. Izzy, thrust into the spotlight, found herself becoming a reluctant symbol of this newfound skepticism, a figurehead for those disillusioned with the established order. The pressure was immense. The constant barrage of interviews, the endless stream of requests for her time and expertise, it became suffocating. She missed the quiet solitude of her apartment, the familiar rhythm of her investigations, the focused pursuit of justice. But she realized she couldn't retreat, not when the fight for reform had become inextricably linked with her very existence. The city itself was grappling with the aftermath. The cleanup was a slow, agonizing process. Investigations into implicated officials dragged on, hampered by bureaucratic inertia and the complex web of legal loopholes. New laws were passed, reforms were promised, but the deeply embedded corruption couldn't be erased with a stroke of a pen. It was a gradual dismantling of a culture of impunity, a slow, arduous process of rebuilding trust. Izzy found solace in Ramirez's quiet support. He was the anchor in the storm, the steady hand that guided her through the turbulent waters of public scrutiny and relentless media attention. Their conversations weren't just about the case anymore, they encompassed the city's soul, its capacity for both remarkable resilience and profound vulnerability. They discussed the potential for future attacks, the possibility of other cells operating in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. The unanswered questions were not mere details, they were the seeds of future conflicts, potential threats lurking beneath the surface. Izzy's vigilance didn't end with Moreau's conviction, it intensified, fueled by the knowledge that the fight for justice was far from over. The ending of the Moreau case, while seemingly conclusive, held a subtle ambiguity. While justice had been served in a limited sense, the complete story remained untold. The identity of the mastermind behind Moreau, the true source of the funding, and the reasons for the mysterious disappearances remained elusive. These unresolved questions weren't simply plot devices. They were echoes of the city's deeper malaise, suggesting that the fight against corruption was a continuous struggle, a battle that extended far beyond the courtroom and into the very fabric of society. The city healed, slowly, painfully. But the scars remained, a permanent reminder of the darkness it had faced. Izzy, though worn, remained vigilant. She understood that the true aftermath wasn't merely the healing of physical wounds, but the long and arduous process of rebuilding trust, reforming institutions, and instilling a new culture of integrity. The hunt had ended, but the relentless pursuit of justice, a pursuit fueled by the unanswered questions, had just begun. The subtle ambiguity of the ending hinted at a future story, a continuation of the fight, a testament to the enduring struggle against the shadows that always seemed to lurk just beyond the periphery of the city's light. The city's future, like the answers to its lingering questions, remained uncertain. The battle had been won, but the war continued. And Izzy, its unlikely champion, was ready. The courtroom's hushed silence, the weight of the gavel's final thud, still echoed in the hollow chambers of my mind. The victory, so hard won, tasted like ash. The city celebrated, its collective breath held for a moment, then released in a wave of relief. Newspapers screamed headlines of Moreau's downfall, of a triumphant victory against the city's corrupt underbelly. But beneath the surface, a deep, unsettling unease lingered. The cheers were hollow, the celebrations muted. The case had been a relentless marathon, a brutal test of endurance, both physical and mental. Sleep had become a luxury, a fleeting respite from the relentless pressure. My apartment, once a sanctuary, felt like a stranger's place, a space I barely recognized amidst the piles of files and half-eaten takeout containers. The lines between work and life had blurred, merged into a chaotic blend of sleepless nights and caffeine-fueled days. The city, vibrant and pulsating with life, felt alien, detached from the intensity of the case that had consumed me entirely. Ramirez, ever the rock, had tried to ease the pressure, his gruff voice a low rumble of reassurance. He'd reminded me that we'd taken down Moreau, a significant victory. But his eyes, those perceptive, weary eyes, had betrayed a shared sense of incompleteness. The victory felt incomplete, tainted. Moreau's confession, meticulously crafted, felt like a calculated performance, a strategic retreat designed to shield others, to protect the true architects of this vast conspiracy. The details he withheld, the carefully chosen words, the subtle manipulations, they screamed of a deeper game, a hidden hand pulling the strings. The unanswered questions gnawed at me, relentless as a persistent headache. The phantom benefactor, the shadowy figure who'd funded Moreau's empire for years, remained elusive. The money trail, a tangled labyrinth of shell corporations and offshore accounts, had vanished into thin air. Each lead, promising at first, led to another dead end, another layer of deception, another frustratingly intricate web of lies. It was like chasing a ghost, a phantom, an enigma designed to taunt us with its deliberate inaccessibility. Then there were the missing witnesses. Several key figures vanished just before their scheduled testimonies, disappearing without a trace. The police, despite their exhaustive efforts, found nothing. Only cryptic messages, unanswered calls, and a suffocating silence remained in their wake. Had they been silenced to protect others higher up the chain? Or was something far more sinister at play? The thought sent shivers down my spine, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the city's gleaming surface. The media, initially enthralled by the drama of the case, shifted its attention. The celebratory tone faded, replaced by a critical appraisal of the very systems that were supposed to protect us. The city's institutions, once revered symbols of authority and integrity, were now viewed with suspicion, their credibility called into question. And I, reluctantly, became the face of this disillusionment, a figurehead for a city wrestling with its own identity crisis. The constant barrage of interviews, the never-ending requests for my time, the pressure to speak, to provide answers to questions I couldn't fully answer, it was overwhelming. I craved the silence of my apartment, the solace of my work, the focused pursuit of justice. Yet, I knew I couldn't retreat. My personal fight for justice had become inextricably intertwined with the city's struggle for reform. I had become a symbol, whether I wanted to be or not. Ramirez's steady presence was my lifeline amidst this storm. He was my anchor, my unwavering support, a source of quiet strength in the chaos. Our conversations transcended the case, diving into the heart of the city's very soul, its resilience and its vulnerability. We discussed the potential for future attacks, the possibility of other cells operating in the shadows, waiting patiently for the opportune moment. The unanswered questions were not mere loose ends. They were the seeds of future conflicts, potential threats waiting to sprout. The conviction of Moreau had not ended the fight, it had merely changed its form. The hunt might have concluded, but the relentless pursuit of justice, fueled by those nagging unanswered questions, had only just begun. The truth, I realized, was a vast and ever-shifting landscape. The surface-level victory was just a glimpse into a far more complex and sinister reality. The subtle ambiguity of the ending, far from being a flaw, was a reflection of the city's own deeper malaise. The struggle against corruption, against the insidious darkness that thrived in the shadows, was a never-ending battle. A war without a clear battlefield, a war that extended far beyond the confines of a courtroom. The city healed, slowly, painfully. But the scars remained, visible reminders of the darkness it had endured. And I, though weary, remained vigilant. The true aftermath of Moreau's downfall wasn't just the physical healing, but the arduous process of rebuilding trust, reforming broken institutions, and cultivating a new culture of integrity. The hunt had ended, but the pursuit of justice, driven by those lingering questions, had just begun. The unresolved mysteries weren't simply plot devices. They were reflections of the city's soul, a testament to the ongoing struggle against the forces that sought to keep it in the shadows. The city's future, much like the answers to its many questions, remained uncertain. The battle had been won, but the war continued. And I, its unlikely champion, was ready to fight. The fight for justice, it seemed, was a lifelong pursuit. A never-ending quest, a journey with no clear destination, but a compelling purpose all the same. The air in Los Angeles, usually thick with the scent of eucalyptus and ambition, felt different now, charged with a residue of fear and uncertainty. Moreau's conviction hadn't erased the stain of his corruption, it had merely highlighted the festering wound at the heart of the city's entertainment industry. The whispers continued, even louder now, fueled by the unanswered questions that gnawed at the city's soul. The media, initially celebrating the takedown of a major player, now dissected the case with a critical eye, questioning the deeper systemic issues that allowed Moreau to thrive for so long. The legacy of his conspiracy was not merely a legal victory, but a cultural reckoning. Hollywood, the city of dreams, found itself facing a harsh reality. The glamorous facade, carefully constructed over decades, was cracking, revealing the underbelly of power plays, backroom deals, and the ruthless pursuit of success at any cost. The fall of Moreau sent shockwaves through the industry, triggering a domino effect of investigations, resignations, and a widespread sense of unease. Talent agents, once revered as gatekeepers of the Dream Factory, suddenly found themselves under scrutiny. Studio executives, previously untouchable, were forced to answer uncomfortable questions about their involvement, their complicity in a system that rewarded silence and punished dissent. The impact extended far beyond the confines of the entertainment industry. The conspiracy had touched every facet of life in Los Angeles, from politics and law enforcement to finance and real estate. The intricate web of connections, revealed during the trial, exposed a level of corruption that was both shocking and deeply disturbing. The city's intricate system of power, once viewed as impenetrable, had been shown to be remarkably fragile, vulnerable to manipulation and exploitation. The investigation into Moreau's financial dealings uncovered a network of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and dubious investments that stretched across continents. The money trail, while partially unraveled, ultimately led to dead ends, shadowy figures who vanished without a trace. The extent of Moreau's influence, the sheer magnitude of his wealth, spoke volumes about the pervasive nature of the corruption. He hadn't been operating in a vacuum, he'd been a part of a larger, more sinister network. This realization fueled calls for sweeping reforms, a fundamental overhaul of the city's systems, designed to prevent future instances of such rampant corruption. The long-term consequences extended to the lives of ordinary citizens. Many who had initially celebrated Moreau's downfall now found themselves questioning their faith in the city's institutions. Trust, the cornerstone of any functioning society, had been eroded, leaving a lingering sense of disillusionment and distrust. The city's image, once a symbol of glamour and aspiration, was now tarnished, struggling to overcome its new reputation for corruption and deceit. The tourism industry suffered, the allure of Hollywood dimmed by the revelations of its darker side. The legal ramifications were equally profound. The case set several precedents, prompting reforms in campaign finance laws, corporate governance, and public transparency. New regulations were implemented to prevent the kind of systemic abuse of power that Moreau had perpetrated. The legal community itself was forced to confront its own limitations, its complicity in perpetuating a system that prioritized power and money over justice. Ramirez and I continued to work tirelessly, pursuing the remaining loose ends of Moreau's operation. Each seemingly insignificant lead offered a glimpse into the depth of the conspiracy, a reminder of how far-reaching its tentacles were. We faced resistance at every turn, from powerful figures who wanted the whole matter buried, to individuals who were fearful of reprisals. The threats were implicit, communicated through veiled warnings and unsettling encounters, a reminder of the enduring power of the shadowy forces we were fighting against. We spent countless hours poring over financial records, interviewing reluctant witnesses, and chasing down phantom leads. Each small victory felt bittersweet, like winning a battle in a war that seemed destined to continue indefinitely. The fight for justice became a relentless pursuit, fueled by an unwavering commitment to exposing the truth. We knew that even if we managed to unravel all the intricate threads of Moreau's conspiracy, the underlying problems, the systemic corruption, the lust for power, the willingness to compromise ethics for personal gain, remained. The media continued to follow our every move, amplifying our efforts while also scrutinizing our methods. The line between being celebrated as heroes and being demonized as troublemakers was often blurred, a testament to the tumultuous nature of the ongoing battle. We became symbols, unwittingly representing the fight against corruption, the struggle for transparency and accountability. The impact on Hollywood was far-reaching. Several high-profile individuals faced legal consequences, their careers irrevocably damaged by the revelations of the trial. The industry underwent a period of self-reflection, a critical examination of its own moral compass. New initiatives were launched, aimed at promoting ethical practices and combating harassment and abuse of power. However, the deeper cultural impact was more subtle, more pervasive. The conspiracy's legacy was not just about the individuals involved, but about the systems that enabled their actions, the cultural norms that allowed such behavior to thrive. It forced a nationwide conversation about power, influence, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. It raised questions about the nature of celebrity, the price of fame, and the seductive allure of unchecked power. The city itself was forever changed, its identity altered by the exposure of its deepest flaws. Years later, the city would slowly heal, its wounds fading, but never fully disappearing. The scars, visible and invisible, served as a constant reminder of the darkness it had endured, a testament to the enduring struggle against corruption. The fight for justice, we learned, is not a sprint but a marathon. It's a relentless pursuit, a never-ending battle against the insidious forces that thrive in the shadows. The legacy of Moreau's conspiracy was not just about his downfall, but about the city's relentless fight to reclaim its integrity, its soul, and its future. The fight for justice, it turned out, was a lifelong commitment, an ongoing struggle that would continue long after the headlines faded and the cameras moved on. The city's resilience, however, was ultimately stronger than the shadows that sought to consume it. The courtroom doors swung shut behind Moreau, the metallic clang echoing the finality of his conviction. But the silence that followed was far from peaceful. It was a pregnant silence, thick with the unspoken anxieties of a city grappling with the fallout of a scandal that had shaken its foundations. For Ramirez and me, the victory felt hollow, a fleeting moment of triumph in a protracted war against entrenched corruption. The celebrations were muted, the champagne tasted like ash in our mouths. We knew that Moreau's conviction was merely a chapter in a much longer, more complex narrative. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of activity. Press conferences, interviews, and endless requests for comment flooded our already overflowing inboxes. The media, initially focused on the spectacle of Moreau's downfall, now turned its attention to the systemic failures that had allowed him to amass such power. The questions were relentless, probing, and often uncomfortable. We deflected, evaded, and answered as honestly as we could, knowing that some answers remained elusive, some truths still hidden beneath layers of deceit. The investigation, far from over, continued to branch out into unforeseen territories. Each new lead, each unearthed document, presented a fresh challenge, a new layer of complexity to the already intricate puzzle. We pursued Moreau's associates, his investors, and those who had knowingly benefited from his illicit activities. The resistance was palpable, a chilling reminder of the forces aligned against us, forces that extended far beyond the reach of law enforcement. We encountered stonewalling, intimidation, and veiled threats. Anonymous phone calls, cryptic messages, and unsettling encounters in dimly lit parking garages became a disturbing part of our daily routine. The sense of unease was constant, a gnawing feeling that we were being watched, that our every move was being monitored. Yet, we persevered, driven by a commitment to justice that transcended personal risk. Ramirez, a man of unwavering integrity and steely resolve, remained my constant companion and unwavering support throughout this ordeal. We were a team, united in our pursuit of the truth. As the months passed, the initial media frenzy subsided, but the investigation continued, expanding outwards, revealing the shocking depth of Moreau's operations. His influence stretched far beyond the glitzy facade of Hollywood. His tentacles reached into every corner of Los Angeles's power structure. We uncovered a network of shell corporations, hidden accounts, and offshore investments, the complexities of which seemed designed to confound and confuse. The sheer scale of his wealth, the audacity of his schemes, was staggering. And it was only the tip of the iceberg. The long-term effects were profound. Hollywood, once a symbol of glamour and ambition, now bore the scars of its own corruption. Careers were ruined, reputations shattered, and the industry itself underwent a period of soul-searching. New regulations were put in place, stricter accountability measures implemented. But the deeper cultural shift was more subtle, a change in attitude, a shift in values. The city, once blinded by the allure of fame and fortune, now had a sharper, more critical perspective. The political landscape underwent a dramatic transformation as well. Several high-ranking officials faced scrutiny, their careers irrevocably damaged by their associations with Moreau. The repercussions extended far beyond the entertainment industry, creating waves of upheaval in various sectors. The city's image suffered, its tourism industry taking a hit as the world grappled with the revelations of Hollywood's dark underbelly. As the dust settled, Ramirez and I found ourselves contemplating the future. We had fought a long, arduous battle, and while we had emerged victorious, the victory felt bittersweet. The weight of the city's ills still rested on our shoulders. We had exposed the truth, but could we truly say we had made things better? The systemic issues that enabled Moreau's actions still remained, waiting for another opportunist to exploit them. The city, however, had changed. It bore the scars of its past, but there was a newfound resilience, a determination to prevent such a scandal from happening again. The citizens were more vigilant, their faith in their institutions shaken but not broken. There was a renewed sense of civic engagement, a collective determination to hold those in power accountable. It was during one of our quiet moments, amidst the quiet hum of the city at night, while looking out at the twinkling lights of the Hollywood Hills, that I sensed a new beginning. The air, once thick with the stench of corruption, now felt cleaner, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Looking at Ramirez, a faint smile gracing his usually stoic features, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The fight for justice was far from over, but we had made a difference, a tangible impact. Izzy, having witnessed the relentless dedication and unwavering commitment to justice, knew that the journey had irrevocably altered her perspective. She had glimpsed the depths of human depravity, the corrosive power of unchecked ambition, and yet, she found herself inspired by the resilience of the human spirit, the unyielding pursuit of truth and justice. She recognized that the fight for a just society is a constant struggle, a marathon, not a sprint. But with each victory, no matter how small, there is hope, the seeds of a brighter future are planted. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and unforeseen obstacles. But we had proven that even the most deeply entrenched systems of corruption could be challenged, exposed, and ultimately defeated. The city, scarred but not broken, was poised for a new beginning, a chance to rebuild its foundations on a bedrock of transparency, accountability, and integrity. The legacy of Moreau's conspiracy was not merely a story of corruption, but a testament to the enduring human spirit's ability to fight for what is right, even when facing insurmountable odds. The journey was far from over, but the path forward, though arduous, now felt more clear. The shadows still lingered, but the light, slowly but surely, was beginning to reclaim the city. The fight for justice, we knew, was a lifelong commitment, a constant vigilance against the insidious forces that sought to undermine the very fabric of society. But armed with newfound knowledge, strengthened by shared experience, and fortified by a renewed sense of purpose, Ramirez and I, and indeed, the city of Los Angeles, stood ready to face whatever the future may hold. A new chapter had begun, one filled with hope, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Back Matter. Untitled Folder. This book would not have been possible without the unwavering support of numerous individuals. My deepest gratitude goes to Detective Ramirez, whose partnership and unwavering commitment to justice were instrumental in bringing this story to light. His insights, his dedication, and his steadfast friendship were invaluable throughout the investigation and the writing process. I am also profoundly grateful to the countless sources who bravely shared their experiences, often at significant personal risk, enabling me to piece together this complex narrative. Their courage and willingness to speak truth to power are a testament to the enduring human spirit. Finally, I offer heartfelt thanks to my editor, Sandra Jensen, for their insightful guidance and tireless work in shaping this manuscript. Their expertise and dedication were essential in bringing this story to life. This appendix contains supplemental materials relevant to the investigation, including excerpts from key documents and a partial list of Moreau's known associates. Due to ongoing investigations and the sensitivity of some information, certain materials have been redacted. A complete archive will be made available at a later date, pending legal review and approval. Shell Corporation, a company created to conceal the identities of its true owners and/or engage in illegal activities. Offshore investments, investments held in accounts in foreign jurisdictions to avoid taxes or regulatory scrutiny. RICO Act, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, a U.S. federal law designed to combat organized crime by targeting racketeering activity. Money laundering, concealing the origins of illegally obtained money by passing it through legitimate businesses or accounts. Entrenched corruption, deeply ingrained corruption within an institution or system, often resistant to reform. Due to the sensitive nature of the information contained within this book, specific sources are not publicly disclosed. This is in order to protect the identities of those who assisted in the investigation and to avoid jeopardizing ongoing legal proceedings. Further information may be made available at a later date. Michael A. Neal is a seasoned thriller writer who decided to invest in his creativity in writing. His writing characterizes intricate plots, shocking twists, and a commitment to exploring the darker aspects of human nature. Prior to pursuing a career in fiction, Jada Williams spent several years working as an investigative reporter, covering major crime and political corruption. This experience provided the foundation for their sharp attention to detail and their ability to craft compelling narratives based on real-world complexities.